On this episode of the DTVC podcast, screenwriter Richard Pierce is on, and we're going to be looking at Capital Conspiracy, the Don the Dragon Wilson film. So stay tuned for that. Now, the first, I'd say hour, maybe 45 minutes of the podcast, it's just, Rich and I are just sort of catching up. We're talking about his time doing Sector 4 Extraction with Olivier Gruner. Talking about sort of the process of writing some of the Lifetime movies that he does and sort of like what, Lifetime looks for when he's writing those scripts and all of that. And we just kind of talk about, general, direct-to-video stuff. But then, after a break, about 45, 50 minutes in, we talk about Capital Conspiracy, Don the Dragon Wilson, and kind of get after that as well. So we had Rich on way back when in the old iteration of the podcast, we talked about puncture wounds. That's one of the ones that was lost to the TalkShoe server meltdown. So I'm going to try to get that one up as well pretty soon. So I hope to have Rich on more in the future here. So it's not going to be 10 years before we have him on again. We're going to have him on more in the future there, but stay tuned for that one coming up. And then next week, we're going to get our man, Ty from Comeuppance is going to be on, and we are going to be talking about what are we talking about? We're talking about Desert Dawn, a movie that we've been meaning to talk about for a while. They finally put it on Hulu. So we're talking about Desert. It's our Philippi factory kind of realized, right? Because you've got Kellen Lutz and you've got Cam Gigondet in there. So Desert Dawn, and then also Shepherd Code 2. So we talked about the first one. Elan Dalabi actually reached out about us talking about that first one. We got a screener for the second one. By the time we recorded and talked about that screener for the second one, it was already on Tubi again. But anyway, so we talked about Shepherd Code 2 as well. And then our spotlight on a fight is the end fight in Deadpool. So that'll be that was a fun conversation as well. So next week, Ty's appearance will be on for next week's episode. And we actually have 2 more episodes already in the can. So we're going to end the month of November with Chris the Brain Kavinsky, who we haven't had on in a little bit. He's back on, and we're talking about Diablo, the new Scott Adkins Marcos of Roar film. So a lot of fun discussing that one. And then we start the month of December with John Cross from After Movie Diner on. We're going to be looking at 2 C. Thomas Howell erotic thrillers. C. Thomas Howell, Joan Severance erotic thrillers, actually. The second of the 2 is Payback, and I think the first one was called Deadly Indiscretions or Dangerous Indiscretions. It was some kind of D word that wasn't good plus indiscretion. So I probably should have looked it up ahead of time, but I'm going to keep forgetting. Even if I looked it up, I would be going back and forth between. I think it's Dangerous Indiscretion. It could have been deadly as well, but it was dangerous. So anyway, that's going to be our first podcast for the month of December. So stay tuned for that as well. Now we also have a DTVC extra. It's been a while since we've done a DTVC extra, but later this week I'm going to put up my episode on Predator Killer of Killers and Predator Badlands. So I did go to the theater this past weekend and see Predator Badlands, so I figured, we'd already done the first 7 Predator movies? Is that what it was? So if you go DTVC Extra, it's episodes 21, 22, and 23 of DTVC Extra. It was actually back in April of 24. I can't believe it was that long ago. We talked about Predator 1 and 2 in the first episode, then the 2 Alien versus Predators in the second episode, and then the third episode we looked at Predators, The Predator, and then Prey, which I really loved. So I got some interesting things to say. I was not a fan of Killer of Killers, and I'll tell you why when we get in there. But I did like Badlands. Now I spoil the hell out of Badlands, so I'm going to say if you haven't seen Badlands yet, go to the theater and see it, and then listen to my podcast. I think it's worth seeing in the theater. It made about $80 million over this past weekend on a $100 million budget, so I would say that's probably going to be good enough to keep it in the theater for a few weeks. But as you know, with each week you don't get out to see it, the number of theaters and the number of times available to see it shrinks. With each passing week. So definitely get out there and see it if you can, because I think it's worth checking out. It's worth watching on the big screen. So, and just know that my DTVC Extra is going to spoil the hell out of it. So if you haven't seen it yet, don't listen to my DTVC Extra unless you're planning on not seeing it, which I recommend you see. I think you should go see it. All right, YouTube channel. What are we doing on the YouTube channel? Nothing this week because we're going to put out a DTVC Extra, but I did... I'm going to probably pretty soon do the Hard Justice. We're going to do the opening action sequence in Hard Justice, so keep an eye out for that one. I was trying to think, it's been about a month since our last one, which was the bathhouse scene in Showdown Little Tokyo, which we may have missed, as I keep saying, because I had to gate it. I had to put the 18-plus gate on it, so it means you have to be signed into YouTube. You may also not be seeing it in your algorithms, but definitely, if you get a chance to see it, check that one out. Yeah, so this is probably where the next one would have fallen in, but I kind of fell behind because last week I didn't do anything extra. I traveled to see my family, and I kind of fell behind on the podcast and the blog, and had to kind of catch some things up last week, and so I just kind of said, you know what, and I think I also recorded those episodes last week as well, which was a lot of fun. But I just kind of said, okay, I'm not going to do anything extra this week. I'll get the blog post up, which I did. That was Mafia Wars, but I'll start kind of going back to doing something extra each week. So it's again, the idea is to have a podcast episode and a blog post every week, and then a third thing that could either be a DTVC extra, could be a YouTube channel video upload, could be an extra, one of my screener reviews. It could be an extra review, could even be a letterboxed, new letterbox list or something like that. So something extra on top of the other two things that you usually expect each week. And just last week I ended up not getting it out to do anything. I was going to try to do this Predator Killer of Killers and Badlands episode over the weekend, and then it just never happened for me. So anyway, we're going to get it in this week. So last week we didn't have an extra thing. You just had the podcast and the blog post. So that means next week we'll probably get that YouTube video in. So look for that end of next week. Again, Hard Justice opening scene, with David Bradley and Yuji Okamoto. Thing of beauty. So I'll be excited to chat about that and make a video on that one as well. In terms of the site, I was trying to think what our next review is going to be, because at this point I have some stuff in the can, but I did Mafia Wars. I don't know if the next one would be like, I've got Cam Gigande with actually, what it probably is going to be? I think I might just do Jade from the Mickey Rourke episode of the podcast that I did with Ty from Comeuppance, just because it's in the can, and we can make it happen. If I get something watched, though, before then, and it's something that I want to review on the site, it could, that could change. As always, there's that upcoming reviews watched letterbox list that I have. So I try to keep that one up to date with what's going to be coming for episodes. But then, of course, if I review something in between then, I might just bump that up in line. But that's a good place to know what the reviews are going to be for upcoming podcast, or sorry, not a podcast, upcoming blog posts. So keep an eye out for that as well. I think that's everything. I haven't done any podcasts yet in a little while. So, I'm going to be recording with some other people coming up here. So, listen for that. Now, book stuff. Oh, we got to get into the book stuff. So, Nadia and Aiden, of course, you can still get that one. Link is in the podcast description. But I did submit my newest one, Mark and Sales, to Amazon KDP. Later this week, I will be getting my first proof copy. I'll take a look at that proof copy. If everything looks good, then we'll submit the whole thing for publication. I know I was targeting November 28th for the release date, but I did my last read-through of it over the weekend, and everything looked good, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just submit it now? We'll just call it, get it in there. I had the cover already created, so let's just do it. So we'll see. Now, of course, when I get the proof back, if there's an issue with it, it could be, another week down the line. Because it takes time. It's like one of those things where it's like I submit it, and then you go for the proof. It takes a few days for the proof to come. If the proof looks good, then you move forward. If it doesn't, then, you got to go back and ask for another one. I could put the Kindle version out right now because I don't need to worry about a proof for the Kindle, but I like to have them both at the same time. So anyway, just keep an eye out. Watch this space, and we'll definitely let you know as soon as that's out. As you can imagine, you're going to be hearing a lot about that when it does come out. It's going to be everything that I do is going to be get Mark in sales. So keep an eye out for that as well. All right, long enough, right? We're about almost 9 minutes in here, so why don't we call it good? John from After Movie Diner and Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures is going to play in our theme song here. And then when we come back, Richard Pierce, screenwriter Richard Pierce is going to be on, and we're going to be talking about Capital Conspiracy. back to the DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined by a very special guest who he had on 10 years ago. We're finally getting him back on again. We've got Richard Pierce, screenwriter who's had some great Lifetime movies, but also Sector 4 Extraction, which he was on the last time to talk about. Welcome back, Rich.
Hey, thank you for having me back. I was such a great guest. You're having me back a decade later. It's a big honor. Happy to be back.
Yes, you and another guest we had, Freddie Young, who we've had on, sometimes. It's a similar situation. It was like he was on in that early incarnation in 2014, and then I guess it's like some I guess I don't know if it's how the sausage is made or some what people call inside baseball. But part of how I get guests a lot of times is people reach out to me about other things, and I'm like, oh, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? And that was kind of how it happened here, because one of your movies, Abducted at Prom Night, Netflix sent me an email saying, hey, I think you're going to like watching this movie. And then, when I mentioned to you, you were like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. And then we were chatting about that. I was like, hey, do you want to come back on the podcast again? And so, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's kind of how it works out at the level I'm at. I don't really get informed about these things. So I had someone right before you message me saying, isn't this one of your terrible Lifetime movies? And I was like, yes, that's one of my terrible Lifetime movies. And then I had no idea it was going on Netflix. So that was a good thrill. So you helped. I think you were actually the one who forwarded me the actual email. So I had a digital copy of that to remember that one of my movies made it on to Netflix. So I thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think you had posted like you were, that you saw that it was going to be on Netflix. And I was like, yeah, they actually sent me an email saying, this is a reason for you to tune into Netflix. So they must know my taste.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I had no clue it was happening, but it was cool that it did.
Yes, no, that's so awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. I remember because when you started posting about some of these movies that you were making, some of these Lifetime movies. Having Tori Spelling talk about one of them on a talk show. Yeah, I think one of the best was Tim Abel, who I've communicated a little bit with him, but mostly just as someone who reviews movies and him appreciating some of the kind words that I've given him. But you had posted a clip from Sector 4 Extraction of you essentially acting in that movie. And
yes.
You made some kind of joke about it, and Tim Abel's like, hey man, however you get started, that's the best. I was like, oh man, Tim Abel is talking shop with Rich on Instagram. This is fantastic.
No, because Tim was in one of my you're familiar with Tubi, I assume.
Yes, was it Final Heist?
Final Heist, yeah, it was a Tubi original. I don't think Tubi's even making originals anymore. They're just like acquiring films now. They're not making their own stuff. But that was a movie I did for Tubi, and Tim Abel played the crazy, sinister prison warden, and he had a handle, like a little twirl, like Raleigh Fingers-esque mustache in that movie, and he is as badass as can be. It was so cool to have him in that movie, and I got to meet him. I've only gone to set of, I think, 2 of my movies, and that was one of them. And during lunch, I sat with Tim Abel, and he talked to us. He talked shop and talked about his chickens. He raises chickens. He's just the coolest dude ever. So yeah, love Tim Abel.
Yeah, he seems like it. So, like on the kind of my towards the end of my time on Twitter, he found my Twitter account and was messaging me. Was like, oh yeah, I've got all kinds of great stories, man. All this stuff. I was like, oh, I'd love to hear all that stuff. But then I got off of Twitter, and so I haven't connected. But there was, what was the movie? Was it Instinct to Kill? There was a movie that he did with
Dacascos.
With Dacascos, yeah. And I thought he was just the best baddie. And I found out later that he found that review and really liked it. That I enjoyed him as the baddie in there. So
that's cool.
And then there was with the Sniper movie that he did with Seagal, where
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I was like, all right, I'm going to post Tim Abel when I do the socials for that, because he was the one doing all the heavy lifting. Seagal was just sitting the whole time.
Totally. He was the star of the thing. I mean, and Fred Olen Ray, I think they've worked together a ton. Speaking of Fred Olen Ray, he's directed the film we're going to be talking about later.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it was he's great in that. And Instinct to Kill, I'm a big physical media guy, as I'm sure you are, and most of your listeners are. I've kind of fallen out lately just because I have a family now and I have a kid, so I don't waste hundreds of dollars a month on buying DVDs and Blu-rays anymore. But some of these boutique releases, there was one of those labels put out Instinct to Kill on Blu-ray. And I was hesitant to get it because I'm like, do I really need Instinct to Kill on Blu-ray? But Tim Abel does a commentary track on that Blu-ray. So I picked it up simply for the commentary track, and it's worth it. So if you haven't gotten it yet, pick up Instinct to Kill on Blu-ray. Whoever put it out, I don't remember what company it was, but it's got a commentary track from Tim, and it was pretty cool.
That definitely sounds awesome. I'd love to check that out. Yeah, because I think it's one of my favorite roles of his was that performance.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's psycho.
Yes.
Totally psycho.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Now it's funny when you were on the last time, you were close to releasing Sector 4 Extraction, and the funny thing was I went on an unplanned hiatus around that time, like 2014, 2015, and I know you'd reached out like, hey, you going to review Sector 4 Extraction? I was like, oh yeah, definitely. And then when I came back like 2019, 2020, I was like, oh, I better review Sector 4 Extraction now. And so I did, and you were kind of like, oh, thanks for reviewing all that. I was like, okay, I was like, okay, he's not as big on it as I thought necessarily. And I had Rich Haas from DTV Digest on to talk about Angel Town, and at the same time, like literally, I think we were recording it almost around the same time that you were recording with the Comeuppance guys, where you were talking about all this stuff that you went through on Sector 4 Extraction. I was like, okay, I get it now, and two, man, I wish I'd heard all this stuff before we recorded the Angel Town episode.
Well, first off, I thank you for doing the review. And I think the reason, first off, it is up your alley. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to review it. But at that time when we spoke, if my memory is correct, I believe I had not seen the film in its completed form. And I had not had, I was still on good terms with Mr. Gruner, which that is no longer the case. But I think it was not a very good breakup, let's say. But there was a period where for about 2.5 years, like I was his personal writer, which was a kind of a weird relationship. Like he would call me at 11:30 at night saying, I have an idea for a movie. And I would just, all right, I guess I'll write a log line for you or something. So there was a period of time where we were fairly close, professionally, I guess you could say. But I was young and I live in Las Vegas. I don't live in LA. Screenwriting has always been my dream. And not living in LA, it's like, well, I have this dream, but I'm away from where the business is. How am I going to make it work? And then one day, this crazy French action star whose movies I rented growing up, I loved his movies. Like Automatic is one of my favorites.
Yes.
Of course, Nemesis is great. Angel Town's great. Mercenary 2, I like better than Mercenary 1. Yeah. But big fan of his. So when I got kind of teamed up with him, I'm like, this is my one shot. I got nothing else. And, when things started to get a little weird, I'm like, well, I guess I better just put up with it, because how else am I going to get movies? How else am I going to get to write movies? And, we worked together, and Sector 4 happened. Another movie happened. And after that, we kind of parted ways. And I'm happy to share whatever stories I can about the making of Sector 4. Because I think, I forget the guy's name who wrote the book about the making of The Room. Greg something.
Oh, Sisteros.
Sisteros,
yeah.
I think I got one of those books in me one day, man. I'm going to write the making of Sector. No one cares about Sector 4. I understand it's not The Room. It's probably it's bad, but on a much less enjoyable level. But I got a million stories, so we can talk about whatever you want about that.
Yes, well, because one of the funny things is so one thing when I was listening to the stories you were telling on Comeuppance about making that movie, Gruner reminded me a lot of this Italian guy that I worked with, which was not like the best experience, but I was like, he was this droopy guy who, I remember I went on vacation for a few days and came back, and he had like redone all of our email templates with just like bad grammar, it was like, but like the way he went about describing it was kind of the way you were talking about, like, with Gruner, where he would do things. And I was just like, oh man, that's just, I was like listening to it. I was like, oh man, it's that guy. My book that I've got coming out this year, Mark and Sales. I actually have a kind of that character. I have him as a small character in the movie. That just because I was in the book, because I was just like, oh, I've got to exercise those demons myself. For that.
Yeah. No, yeah. The way I've described Gruner, and it kind of came from the Comeuppance podcast, because they helped me nail it down to a really accurate description. Was he's like an odd combination of we were just talking about The Room, an odd combo of Tommy Wiseau with Balky from Perfect Strangers. But the thing is about him, and I want to emphasize, he's not a bad human being.
Right.
It's the working relationship was not good towards the end. And I was a young man, and I was doing a lot of work for free, and it just got irksome after a while. And there's definitely egos, even at these low levels. Gruner, to me and you and people who listen to your show, is a star. Like, he's a name. And the other guys like that, but there's egos within it. Like, the amount of stories he told me about how much he fucking hates Jalal Murhi. I was like, I'm like, you guys are both at such in big picture. I'm not insulting him. He's built a career. Both of them have, but you guys are at such a mid to low tier level that shouldn't you all be collegial and like be buddies? But no, he's a total fraud. Jalal is fake. And it's like, well, you're kind of fake. Like, we're all fake. Like, this is movies. So it got to where that kind of stuff was taking over, becoming the primary focus, where I kind of just was like, I think it's time to step away.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, I mean the thing, like, with that email template with the Italian guy, like when you were talking about how he was misspelling people's names, and,
Yes.
I think it's even in the trivia on IMDb, is just that, he just was misspelling it. So that just like completely reminded me. I mean, the other funny thing was Outlaw Vern reviewed Sector 4.
Yes.
So, yeah. And didn't he like go in the comments? And,
oh boy.
Right. I think Gruner like got mad at him in the comments.
So I was still talking to Gruner at that point because Sector 4 had come out. I don't know. He was unhappy with how Lionsgate handled it. And I'm like, dude, this is in every Blockbuster and every Walmart. Like, I guess maybe he thought it was going to be theatrical. I don't know. Big picture, Lionsgate acquired the movie, which was a huge thrill. When I was in the room when that happened, it was so cool. I'm like, Lionsgate wants this movie? That blows my mind. So I was still talking to him around that time. I was actually chasing my final paycheck from him. And Sector 4 had come out, and of course, IMDb just destroyed it. All the reviews were terrible and all this stuff. And he was telling me about this one guy who wrote a review. And he mentioned the name Vern. I'm like, I know exactly. He wrote Sagology. Right. Of course, Gruner has no idea what that is. But I'm like, that's an honor to get a bad review from him. At least he watched it and gave it a review. Yeah, it's great. So I went home and I am reading the review, which is harsh. But again, at this point, it doesn't hurt my feelings when people say that movie's terrible because I was young when I wrote it. The script probably was terrible, but ultimately what they filmed was not my script. So I do have this detached feeling about it where it's like, maybe if you had filmed my script, it would have been maybe a little better. But so I can impartially read these things. And I get to the bottom of the review and I see a comment like basically ripping Vern, saying, you're nothing but a Starbucks talker. You do nothing with your life. But the username was, I believe, if I remember right, the username was Gruner's character's name from Sector 4. So he used like his character's name. I think this is what it was. And when you click on the username, you could put like a link to like your website or bio. It took you to Gruner's website. And it had, of course, the grammar inaccuracies that you would expect from Olivier Gruner. So I'm like, Gruner got in a comment flame war argument with Vern on his own article, which is still one of the most glorious things I've ever witnessed in my life.
Yeah, I think I saw that Vern had reviewed something else that had Gruner in it, and I think he referenced that, and I was like, wait a second, no way. And so then I went back to my own review of Sector 4 Extraction. I realized I wasn't anywhere near as harsh on it as Vern was. But I also recognized when you said it wasn't really your script, I was like, yeah, I can't imagine that you had 5 pages of training montage, right?
Yes.
Right.
No, it was. My theory has become that he had basically an investor lined up who was willing to give a couple $100,000 to go film his quote unquote comeback movie. Which, for a low budget movie, he could have pulled that off. I don't think he did. But in order to get the approval for the budget, he had to have a script. So I think he literally could have presented them any 90-page document that was decent and they would have signed off. And then he just went and filmed whatever he wanted. It was the basic central story which actually was his idea. Basically, he wanted to do a modern day Missing in Action, which I guess could work. And I wrote a very Expendables-esque type movie because that was hot at the time and obviously a big thing for me as an action fan. And I remember after I gave him the final draft of the script, his only note he ever gave me was, I don't want Expendables, I want Act of Valor. Which, if you remember, Act of Valor was that movie that came out in like 2012, 2013, where it was like real life Marines, no actors.
Right.
It was fictitious, but it was basically like a documentary because they just used real soldiers in the movie. And I'm like, how are you going to pull off Act of Valor for $200,000? Dude? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So ultimately, they just went and filmed whatever they wanted, which is why there's so many shirtless montages of him showing off his pecs and looking good on camera, or at least what he thought looked good. But God bless him. That's what I say.
Yes. I mean, the one thing I remember when I posted my review on Facebook was somebody, because the one thing about the movie that just stood out to me was I was like, man, there's just way too many training montages. I mean, it's like the whole middle of the movie is just,
Act 2 is like 4 training montages. Yeah, exactly.
It's just like Gruner being like, I'm going to disarm this guy. I think it's like an Israeli special forces guy or somebody who's showing him how to
Yep.
And so I just remember thinking like, okay, and I don't know how to say this, I was trying to think of how I was going to say it in a great way and all this stuff, but I was just like, that was just too much. And then I posted the Facebook review, and somebody commented like, "Oh, I loved all those training montages." And I was like, "Really? You did?"
Was it Olivier Gruner?
That's what I'm wondering now after the whole with Vern. I'm like, yeah.
He's very good. He's a master catfisher. He just makes all these fake accounts, which actually he well, I'll keep that one private. But yes, he did do that. That was he would post fake reviews of his stuff. And it was always interesting because he has a very particular, shall we say, cadence to his vocabulary and his spelling. So it was always noticeable. Once I caught on to it, once he kind of alerted me, I'm like, oh, there it is. And when I saw it with Vern, I'm like, oh, that's definitely him.
That's right. Exactly.
But I should check. I wonder if those comments are, I mean, this is going on 10 years.
Right.
I wonder if that, the article, I'm sure, is still up. The review, I should say.
Oh, yeah, because I saw that relatively recently. So I can't remember. I want to say it might have been like one of those Alexander Nevsky movies that has Gruner in it.
Sure, yeah, he's in one of those, yeah.
Yeah, I want to have been one of those that Vern reviewed. I can't remember. Something that he reviewed, or you know what it could have been? It might have been even Angel Town. Like, he might have reviewed that after he did Sector 4 Extraction. And when I was doing the episode on Angel Town, I may have like, oh, well, what did other people say about it? Oh, let me see what Vern had to say. And that might have been what it was. And then he was like, I think the comment was something like, I don't know if I should even be reviewing more of this guy's stuff, because I think he was just in the comments of another one of my posts. So, yeah.
That's a smart move. Gruner was an active user. Do you remember when IMDb had message boards underneath each movie?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, he was on there all the time. Like, it just arguing back with people about his movies. It was pretty funny.
Oh man, what a trip! Now on a slightly different note, because when you were on, 10 years ago, before when you were kind of in the process of making Sector 4, and you were telling us, kind of what's going on with Gruner, but I remember you mentioned before you got into screenwriting, when you were in college, that you interviewed Reb Brown for
oh my God.
Yeah, just because I remember that story, because now whenever I see Reb Brown stuff, I always think of that interview when you mentioned that.
I don't remember mentioning that, but I absolutely have a Reb Brown story if I can regale you with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
It probably is the same story I told you, but here it is 10 years later. Let's see if I
and we still don't have that episode up yet. I still got to.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, so most people listening probably haven't heard it anyway. So
okay, there you go. So Reb Brown, wonderful actor, Reb Brown, Howling 2, Robo War. I mean, just gotta love the guy. Space Mutiny. That's one of my favorite Mystery Science Theater episodes. Just a really great guy. This is 2008, 2009. I got a job somehow. I'm a terrible writer. That's what I always say. I'm a terrible writer. I think I'm a decent screenwriter, but I'm a very bad writer. Prose is hard for me. It's just not something I'm good at. Certainly not nonfiction or journalistic writing. But somehow I got a job writing for my university newspaper, my senior year. And they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, the only thing I know is movies. So I could do your movie reviews, and I would love to have a column. And they're like, well, what kind of a column? And I'm thinking I was going to do like Dennis Miller rants or something stupid like that. But they're like, just do like a bad movie column. And I'm like, that's right up my alley. Mystery Science is huge for me. So yeah, I can do that. So going into that year, I was planning out what I was going to do. And I was like, I want to dedicate a month to one of these action guys. And Reb Brown came to mind. And a good buddy of mine said, why don't you do February? And I was like, why? And he goes, because then you can call it Rebruary. And I'm like, oh, God, that's a brilliant joke. I'm totally going to steal it and pretend it was mine. So February comes around, and I did the first one. I can't remember what it was. It may have been Your Hunter of the Future.
Oh yeah.
For my review, doing very much like what you do with your reviews, but I was trying to be funny, which I'm sure I wasn't. Is my point? Like, you do what you do very well. I was doing a bad version of that with really bad jokes, and it just probably was embarrassing if I were to go find those articles now. But I did one, and then I did another, and then out of nowhere, I got an email at my university email address from a guy claiming to be Reb Brown. And I was like, I don't think this is real, but it was him. It legitimately was him reaching out. He was working for like a Christian DVD releasing company. Like, they would release children's Christian films and stuff like that. And I went to that website, and sure enough, like in the, About Us tab was him as vice president or whatever it was. And I'm like, this is legitimately Reb Brown. He was being very nice. Like, I saw your reviews. I want to thank you for talking about this. Would you like to do an interview? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And if my memory is correct, ultimately we never got to an interview, but we did have some email exchanges back and forth. And then when I graduated, like, the conversation kind of died off. I don't think he ghosted me, but I think he kind of just got tired of indulging me. So ultimately, like, my last week of college, I wrote like a goodbye column and left as a comment, very much like Olivier Gruner, leaving comments on every article. Reb Brown left this beautiful message about, like, he went to USC and college was the best years of his life, and he wishes the same to me and all my endeavors, and just wrote this beautiful little post. And that was the last interaction I had with him. And it was a really cool, kind of weird experience. Yeah. Okay. Cut to years later, there was some dude on YouTube, and I'm not saying he ripped off my idea. I just think two people had the same concept. This dude did like video reviews, and I forget his name, but he was pretty known for a while. And he did a month-long Reb Brown tribute and called it Rebruary. And I felt half ripped off, because I'm like, there's no way that two people had that same joke. But then again, I stole that joke from my friend. So it's, who knows? Either way, it just felt like two people had the same crazy idea.
Well, yeah, because I think one of the things you mentioned when you were on the podcast that I kind of remember was, didn't he say something about how, like, these movies that I make, they're junky, but they paid for X, Y, and Z. He
said something like, it paid for my house in Malibu and a Lamborghini or something like that. I could probably still find it. I think I took a screenshot of it and I put it on my Facebook, so I could probably find that for you if you would like to see it. But it was very nice. And yeah, he said something like, actors know when they're making crap, but crap can, basically buy a house and a Lamborghini. So whatever, pays the bills.
Yeah, because recently we did an episode on Space Mutiny, kind of with and without, the MST3K. And in light of what you said about that, about, how, these movies are crap, but they pay for things. I was like, wait a second. Because the other thing I didn't realize, I thought he had met his wife on Space Mutiny, but no, they were married before he did Space Mutiny.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so
Chrissy or whatever her name is,
Chrissy, right? Something. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, but it makes now it's like, oh, wait a second. Reb Brown, like David Winters and the AIP guys go to Reb Brown and say, "Hey, do you want to do a movie for us in South Africa?" He's like, "Sure, if I can bring my wife."
Oh, it's like that's cute. Right? That's adorable.
Yeah, it's like you watch it now and it's like, oh, it's a couple that are just having a fun time in South Africa on a paid holiday. And it's like it makes the whole thing completely different, from the MST3K version of it.
Sure, I assumed they met on that movie too. But that blows my mind. And now that I've worked on quote unquote real movies. They're still low budget, but they're at least professionally made, unlike Sector 4. Everyone knows, like, I've written scripts where it's like, I was given 4 weeks for the script all in. And, we have a start date before you even started typing fade in, you know what I mean? So you're kind of put in a position where it's like, you're already under the gun. And sometimes you don't execute well and everyone's aware of it. And people know when they're making a piece of shit. But you still do your best, and sometimes those pieces of shit can then turn into inadvertent fun. If it's done in a fun way. Like Sector 4 is not a fun bad movie; it's just a boring bad movie. But I have a movie called A Lifeguard's Obsession, which is basically The Dentist. Remember that Corbin Burnson movie?
Yes.
It's essentially The Dentist, but with a lifeguard. And it's not a good movie, but it is so freaking fun. Like, when people ask me what movies of mine they should watch, I always put that one up there because it's not great, but you're going to have a blast watching it because it's so silly and so ridiculous. So I get what Red Brown was saying. It took me a long time, but I guess I understand what he meant.
Yes, well, yeah, because I think that's the thing. Is that like, you know, like you said, like like with like the Lifetime movies, and I've talked to another screenwriter, Tom Jolliffe, who comes on, and like he'll send in scripts for like movies that are made in the UK that
Mm.
they just, all the actors pretend they're from the United States, and they somehow make like like some seaside English town supposed to be an American town, and then they just like slap Amityville on it or something like that and push it onto Tubi.
Sure.
And he'll say like, I'll write a movie where it's like two couples that go into a cave and encounter a bunch of witches, and the people that get the script will decide, no, actually we just want four women in this, we don't want any dudes, and so they just rewrite the script so that it's four women in his movie. But it's still, it's kind of, and that, but like you said, it's kind of like, like you write your script, you kind of get it out there, and then it's kind of got to be kind of interesting to see what the finished product looks like at the end.
Oh no, it's really fun, and it's also really scary sometimes, because even I have a movie coming out this month, actually on the 19th on Lifetime, and I have not seen a single frame of it. I don't know who they cast in it. I know nothing about it. I just know it exists and they made it. I don't even know if I was rewritten. That's happened a couple times too, where I'll be sitting on premiere night with my wife, and she likes to take pictures of like when my name comes on the screen, and she'll be like queued up, ready, waiting for the credits to come up, and it comes up and it's me and someone else, and I'm like, I guess I got fired and didn't even know about it because they hired another. That's only happened, I think, once, but it's you literally are so detached from the process. And I think even I've never written a big Hollywood studio film or anything like that, but I think even nowadays at that level, once you turn your script, it's not like it was back in the day where the writer was on set and they have any say in anything, like unless you're a producer, which I think is even rarer too. So it's really just hand it off and you hope for the best.
Well, yeah, because I think too, like with whether it's it's like Fred Olen Ray, who's directing this movie here, or like David Dakota or somebody like that, who like they're kind of like a hired gun as the director. And I wonder, I think it's also like right where your script goes to one of them, and then the studio's like, how can you make this in like 7 days or whatever, make it as quickly as possible, and then they start making little changes to things because they're like, okay, this is if we're going to make this in this quick a time, we're going to put this person in or do this kind of thing, and they start probably switching things up too.
Oh yeah, no, there's always the practical things. Case in point, my Abducted on Prom Night, which for better or worse, I think is one of my more fun movies. It's basically Collateral, but with a bunch of kids held hostage in their prom limo. It's a fun little tweak. It's very not Lifetimey, so I was always surprised that Lifetime wanted to make that movie. But that one, there's another writer credited who I had no idea about. But when I watched the movie, it's 98% my script. The only changes are very practical, logistical things like toning down locations, pulling back locations, limiting locations. So I really think they just had another writer do like a budget pass almost on it, because the movie also got shipped up to Canada, which I think changes how much money they have allocated for certain things. So that one was interesting too, and it's again, not being on the production side of things. When I write, sometimes I'll write a scene in a moving car, and I'll get a note like, "Are you fucking nuts? A moving car? You know how expensive that is?" And I'm like, "I didn't think it was that expensive, but okay, I guess I'll make it a parked car." It's just simple things like that can sometimes lead to a big blow up in budget. So
yeah, well, and I guess too, like when they have when you write these scripts, do they like for example, like did they get annoyed if you put too much direction or anything like that in it?
Oh sure, yeah, like they very specifically in the world I'm in, which is these TV movies. They want it to be a quick, fun beach read type feel, because they're asking actors and producers and directors to do these films for probably less than what they're used to. I don't know what Tori Spelling's going rate is, but I imagine a Lifetime Channel movies these days is lower than it was when she made Lifetime Channel movies 25 years ago. So the script is a big draw for them because they want people to sign on for probably less than they would normally take. So by doing a fun read will make them hopefully more inclined to do that, or an interesting character. And there's always mandates with Lifetime where they're like, this year we're doing, all we want is like cheerleader movies, like killer cheerleader movies. And then next year you'll hear like cheerleaders are dead, no more cheerleader stuff. So there's always these mandates and these unwritten rules and written rules and all that kind of stuff. But you just want to write the most engaging thing that they could pull off for cheap.
And I guess that makes sense too, like with Tori Spelling, for example, where like, she's often like, she might be in the news for the wrong things, or she might be on The Soup because her reality show is bad or something like that. But if she does like one of these Lifetime movies, yeah, like you said, maybe they can't pay her as much, but now she's doing the talk show circuit. And so, and doing it for positive reason, right? To be able to say, I have something coming here.
Totally.
So I guess there's value in that for them.
Absolutely. Because they're taking a smaller fee, but now they have a reason to go on. I don't even know what show it was, but there was some morning show that she went on with Mario Lopez as the co-host. And I was like blown away. Like, oh my God, Tori Spelling is on a morning show talking about a movie. Like it felt so like 1990s. Like, who watches morning shows anymore, I guess.
Right.
But either way, yeah, that's exactly it. So now she can promote her podcast that she also has, and then do all this other stuff. And it's a symbiotic relationship of it's all bullshit, but it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun.
Well, that's the thing, I think, is that it is a lot of fun where like, movies like that, like you can, like, especially now that they're on Tubi in particular.
Yeah.
'Cause I think one of the things with them when they're on Lifetime, a lot of times I'll DVR them if to catch them that way, because the commercials on Lifetime, I mean, your scripts, like they must get whittled down to like 75 pages, it seems, because it seems like with the volume of commercials that they don't quite hit that 90-minute mark or 88-minute or something like that.
It's in the 80s usually, but you're 100% right, because being a pretentious little shit going to film school and saying, an act break can come whenever you want, man. There's no rules. There's all this bullshit. And then getting, my primary income is writing Lifetime movies where you are writing act breaks going into a commercial, and those commercials have to come at the exact minute. So it's like a Lifetime script has 9 acts in it, and it's page 22 is the first act break. And you can't deviate from that, because that's when they're cutting to commercial. So you have to then structure your story in this very rigid form. That's the part of the job that sucks the most, is like, writing good movies hard, let alone try to then make it fit this extremely weird structure. And especially toward the end, because that's when commercial breaks come like every 5 minutes. Right. It's like 5 minutes a movie, 5 minutes commercials, 5 minutes a movie. Because by that point, they hope they've hooked you to where you'll sit through all these commercials. So you're literally writing like 5 minutes of movie and then fade to black, and then we come back, and it's nuts.
Yeah,
but a lot of.
I was going to ask about that, because it does feel like that with the Lifetime movies, that like the first like 20 minutes or so, there's nothing for commercials. Then it's like at the end, they just seem to be fast and furious.
That's exactly, I think, I've never spoken to an executive at Lifetime who's confirmed it, but that I think is what it is. The first act is always the longest. Like, there's a potential, like if you're watching the first 20 minutes of a Lifetime movie, you might forget you're watching a Lifetime movie until you get to that first commercial break, which is always fun when like, Prom Night, when it went to Netflix, my first thought was like, man, I hope they cut out all the fade to blacks, which is where they fade to commercial. Just get rid of the fade to blacks and just cut to the next scene, and maybe you wouldn't know. But they leave in the fade to black, so that way you're watching a movie on Netflix, and 22 minutes in, the scene ends and it fades to black and then comes back. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yes. It's funny. I watched Deep Blue Sea for the first time. And I'd always, it's always on cable. It's always, a TNT New Classic. So I'd always seen like pieces of it. But YouTube has a free version. It's like an official YouTube version of it that's supposed to have commercials. But they don't have commercials, but it is the TV version. Like, for example, all the swears are dubbed over. Like, I can't remember what Michael Rappaport was saying, but like whatever it was that he was saying, it was dubbed over. But it has the fade outs as well. And it's like fade outs that don't go to anything. It was a show. It was one of those things. I was on the Deep Blue Sea podcast, and I thought, well, I should watch the movie, even though we weren't talking about that. We were talking about Shark Attack 2. I was like, I should at least watch it. So I was watching it, and it was like watching watching it on TV growing up, only without the actual commercials in it.
That has to be like what a bizarre experience, like to watch it, because that'd be like taking a sitcom but getting rid of the laugh track. It just has to be like a very eerie feeling, like this is not the way this is supposed to be watched.
Yeah. No, it was a trip. And I think if it wasn't me watching it for just to be able to say I'd seen the movie, to like, if they brought it up on the podcast to be able to like
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't that situation, I probably would have been like, I should at least pay the $4 and rent it and get like the actual version of it. But and it is funny that like because I don't even think it's listed anywhere. I just happened to check YouTube because I was like, oh, maybe somebody uploaded a version and it's like there for like because you know like with bigger movies they're there for like a month before somebody gets it taken down. And I was like, maybe on the off chance, and I was like, oh no, this is the official YouTube version on
So
here.
weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah. So yeah,
he's a great movie though. I love Deep Blue Sea. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a trip. Like one of the things I was saying on that podcast is that I always root for the Sharks, and I was kind of disappointed with the Sharks. You know, like even with LL Cool J, I was like, I don't really want to see LL Cool J defeating the Sharks. You know, they had a raw deal in that movie.
But you were talking about Shark Attack 2?
Yes.
Now, correct me. Is that the one with the let's go inside and I'll eat your foot?
That's part
the third
3.
one.
That's the third one, right? And the first one has Casper Van Dien. The second one, it has this actor Thorsten Kaye, who I'm trying to think of what you would know him from. I mean, there was something like in the 90s, like it was like a commercial or something for Indiana Jones, and I think he played Indiana Jones in the commercial.
Okay,
that's like the best that I can do. And then soap operas. He does like he does like I think essentially, you know how like in America how we've been getting rid of the soap operas. And it seems like I think he's on General Hospital now. He's on one of the few remaining ones. But like if you look at his IMDb, he essentially like is on one and then it gets canceled. He moves to one of the ones that still exists and he's just kind of like hopping to them. At some point when we get rid of soap operas altogether, I don't know what he's going to do, but
he will cease to exist. Yeah, he'll just fade into nothingness. Yeah.
Yes, that'll be it for him. But yeah,
so he's like the utility infielder of soap operas, basically.
Right. Okay, exactly. Yeah, it's him and there's another guy who's like a British guy who I think is also doing the same thing. Like they just seem to be just like, you know, somehow surviving. I mean, it is kind of one of those things like, you know, us, you know, kind of living through this change in media that like soap operas in particular, where it was like, you know, as recently as like the 90s into the 2000s, like your whole afternoon on TV would be soap operas from like noon to like Judge Judy at 4 p.m. or something, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, now that they're gone, you know, they just, you know, that's it.
Well, whenever I talk to people, like, you know, they'll say, you have another movie coming out. I'm like, yeah. But I always have to preface it with like, do you still have cable? Because hardly anyone does. So it's like, you know, at all levels, things are changing, and it's a very odd time. I don't think I like it though, because I miss the physical. Obviously, I miss the physical media, and you know, it's devastating to me that now I think I'm on my 13th movie, and only one of them exists on physical media, and it's Sector 4, of course. Like none of the other, because they're TV movies, they don't ever go on physical. They just will air, and then they'll wind up on a streaming platform like Netflix or Hulu or whatever. Yeah. I miss that stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's like that. You know, it's like that. Speaking of the other, that you know, Tom Jolliffe, who I've had on as a screenwriter, one of his movies was played here theatrically, Cinderella's Revenge, and I always kind of felt guilty that I was able to see his movie theatrically when he couldn't. You know, it wasn't. You know, and it's like at least I think in his case it's a little different because a lot of his are horror movies and action movies, and a lot of times in Germany, because Germany's just really big on physical media, that they release everything. Which, I mean, I was looking, because I was curious, you know, I was kind of curious about this myself, about like how, you know, if in the past Lifetime movies had physical releases. And I think what it was is they were released abroad physically. Like I think like, you know, like Mother May I Sleep with Danger, I think it's like a Greek release or something like that.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe at some point, maybe that'll be what happens. You know, maybe that. You know,
I'd love it.
Yeah,
I'd have to track down the Greek edition of "Do You Trust Your Boyfriend" or whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that would be. I know that's the other thing too, right? Because you know, even the directed Tubi ones, it's like it's one of the other things I think it's difficult about it, right? Is that you know, if Tubi decides to take something down, or you know, Netflix or whatever, you're kind of, it's like, where do you find these movies? Yeah,
exactly. No, and that's why, you know, I've tried to find ways to, like, when I DVR my movies that air on Lifetime, I'm like, how can I just get this on some sort of physical thing? That way I have it, because if they don't air again on TV and they're not on a streaming service, it's gone. And if my DVR breaks, it's gone to me. Like, I don't know how I find it unless it's bootlegged somewhere.
Yeah,
which I'm sure some of them are. But then there's also weird things like, and this is stuff no one will give a shit but me, but like some of my movie, I had one of my Lifetime movies come out and it was not a very good movie. So they decided to air like a 62-minute version of it. Like they cut down from whatever was 87 minutes down to 62. So it's like only 2/3 of the movie, obviously. And that's how it premiered. That's how it aired. But then like a year later on Lifetime's like HBO channel, where it's just Lifetime movies 24/7, they aired the full 2-hour version. And I had never even seen it. So I'm like, what the hell? So I, of course, DVR'd it. So now it's like lost media that only I care about. And now when they repeat it, they repeat the 62-minute version. So like, I'm like, if my DVR breaks, that is gone forever. And I have no way of seeing the full uncut version of my awful movie.
Yeah, I think what you have to do, this is what I used to do with the DVR, was I would hook my VCR up to the DVR.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that would work. Okay, so go on.
So I think what you have to do is I think you have to, if the DVR box has the cable output, like the the old coaxial cable, if it's got that, I think you can hook it to the VCR through whatever channel it I think for old VCRs it was like channel 3 would be the one that you would and I think you can do that and then tape it that way. I mean, the other way is if with the HDMI cords, a lot of laptops have HDMI cables, and you might be able to hook it to your laptop and then like use like an OBS or something like that. I mean, it would take up a lot of space on your computer. That's the only thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of stuff like I wanted to do, because it's entirely possible some of these movies just may disappear. And, obviously I care about them all because I wrote them, even if they're not good, some of them. I just would want to have them. And movies disappear all the time, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, speaking, the movie we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, the director, Fred Olen Ray, he was on Facebook talking about how he bought a bootleg copy of one of his movies on eBay because MGM owns the rights to a bunch of his movies, and they've just vaulted them. They've just kind of have this mindset of it's not worth the investment for us to put these on Blu-ray or even to put them on streaming. So we're just not bothering with them. And then it's like essentially like if for Fred Olen Ray, if he has to like pay them an exorbitant fee for the rights, which he's not going to bother. So it's like a huge chunk of his catalog is just sitting there in MGM vaults and nothing is coming of it. And it's like, I think, you think of companies like Vinegar Syndrome or somebody like that would probably do something with those. And there is a market for them. I think there's people that would like them, but yeah, it's just, so yeah, I mean, Fred Olen Ray feels your pain. He knows exactly.
There you go. Yeah. No, it's all the one thing I love about the current era that we're in now. I hate, I mean, obviously I use streaming, but like if I could get it on physical, I would always do that if that was an option. But these boutique labels, and there's so many of them, Vinegar Syndrome and oh my God, one of my favorite documentaries of all time is Papatopoulos, the Jim Wynorski documentary.
Oh yes, yeah.
I think it's Terror Vision is the name of it, but they're another one of those like small labels. They put out like this killer Blu-ray with the movie and like the uncut version of it, just amazing. So like these really small labels that are making movies that aren't going to sell 1 million copies, but for the hungry audience, they do a good job, and I like that part of where we are right now.
Yeah,
because then very small movies like Instinct to Kill will get a commentary track, and you're like, why on earth would that movie get it? But it's so cool that exists.
Yeah, and I do wonder, like with the Lifetime movies, for example, because they have such a cult following that if Lifetime gets to a point where they're not putting these out, and I mean, I know they have their Lifetime movie channel that's like a streaming channel that people can pay for and things like that. But you do wonder if like somebody will come along, maybe someone who's in their 20s or 30s now who enjoys the Lifetime movies will say, 10, 15 years from now, oh, why don't I start putting these out on DVD for people? And there might be a similar like Vinegar Syndrome. I mean, I think of some of the classics of that, like Mother May I Sleep with Danger. I mean, it's like if Vinegar Syndrome released that would be a fun pickup.
Sure, totally, yeah. And a lot of these, some of them, like the reason I got into the Lifetime movies is because when I was a kid and my mom would watch Lifetime movies, it was all like a breast cancer story or a courtroom custody battle, and they were hardcore drama. Now, like they don't do any of that. All they do is single white female told a billion different ways. Like or from my generation, Swim Fan. Like basically, I've written Swim Fan 9 different times. It's just changing it to a lifeguard, or now it's whatever. So all they do is these really they're thrillers, and they're borderline horror just with no blood. So I think it's weird because their main audience is still moms, and movies that moms can watch with their teenage daughters is basically the market. But you see lots of like horror dudes who are really into these movies because they're very much 90s direct-to-video horror movies, just with no blood. There's a series called Stalked by My Doctor with Eric Roberts, the wonderful Eric Roberts, star of Sector 4 Extraction. He just plays a crazy doctor who stalks his patients, and I think there's been 5 or 6 of them. One of them was a musical where they had like musical numbers in it. They're just genius. So like one day I could see that being a box set and just totally going to the horror crowd as, you know, exactly what it's just cheesy, crazy shit, and so much fun.
Yeah, no, totally. I totally agree. 'Cause, you know, there's a YouTube channel called Jay Harang. He's named after. I don't know if you've heard of that.
He's done
one.
a few of my movies. Yes.
I was wondering if he did some of your movies. Yeah, because he's a trip. I found out about him because a director from Australia, Nate Hill. He wanted me to review one of his movies, and I watched it, and I was like, I feel like I'm missing something, right? It was just one of those things where I watched the movie, and I was like, it wasn't working for me, and I couldn't figure out why. So I watched this Jay Harang, and then he even interviewed Nate as well. But then I was like, I started watching his videos, and I was like, man, I love his takes on some. I mean, he can be a little bit rough, like he'll get in on people's looks and things like that, which I think, in the late 2000s, I probably still was doing that myself, but, sure. Sometimes maybe not so much now, but it is funny. And it is kind of funny too, to see certain like hallmarks that these Lifetime movies have, that's like you said, like the single white female element, or like the guy who killed his family in this mysterious way in the past and suddenly shows up in this town and is either, acoustic guitarist or pool boy or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, his stuff's fun. Yeah. I loved, I don't know, I should check. Maybe he's done more at this point, but I know he's done 2 of mine. And one of them is my absolute favorite. And it was funny. He was roasting it, but with care. Like you could tell he was like, yeah, it's a terrible movie, but I had fun with this one. So I respected him for that. But yeah, he was basically saying the male lead, the handsome, hunky boyfriend, he said he had a giant head. And I'm like, I'm watching it because I wanted to share it on social media, but I'm friends with that guy, the actor, and I'm like, I don't think he has a giant head. Like, but I'm like, I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to be too like I'm supporting. Yeah, you have a giant head, dude. So it was funny, but I agree with you. Like, it was tough to like. I didn't want to share it with my colleagues, but I loved his take and. Very funny. Love his videos.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I love to. Yeah, like towards the end where there's the dancing, the guy who's got kind of like the blondish reddish hair is Nate Hill. He kind of pulled from one of his movies, him dancing, and it puts it in there. I think there's other part where when he says hello or something like huh or something like there's like because he's got those little he kind of has those little clips that he puts in, and the person on the phone with like that with a black eye or something, that's Nate from his movie Jasper. So
okay, I'm gonna have to look that up.
That's how I found him, and I generally watch him once a week now because he puts out a new video every week, and it's just like I always get a kick out of it, and it is kind of funny like some of the hallmarks of those movies have also too. It's like it seems like a lot of times there's some kind of a bondage element where somebody gets tied up at some point. You got to always have that. There's always an older person who's just kind of hanging around who gets killed in some way. There's
There's always the spunky best friend to the main character who catches on, and then they get killed first. Like there's a million tropes, and you do have to follow them, but hopefully you present them in a way that's at least fresh-ish, and it's not the same old thing every time.
Well, yeah, because sometimes they mix it up with the friend, right? Because sometimes the friend gets killed, and then sometimes the baddie tries to kill the friend, but the friend shows up in the final act.
It's like the end of Kindergarten Cop, where the woman comes back at the end and saves Art. Exactly. It's literally taking a collage of all these things that exist in other movies and putting it together, and hopefully something that they dig. But it's funny because they'll say we want fresh stories, and they'll put out these mandates, and you'll send them something fresh, and they'll be like, no. What we really want is a boyfriend who's abusive to his girlfriend, and then there's like a murder mystery, and it's like, you just did 30 of those last year. Like, what do you mean fresh?
That's right. This one has an Amish guy, right? A lapsed Amish guy, right? It's like that's the right.
Well, that is a subgenre now. Were you being facetious, or did you know that?
No. Well, I only know because Harang, he did one that was like a lapsed Amish guy who kidnaps a girl and brings her. Yes, yeah.
No, there's sexy Amish movies now on Lifetime, which is the oddest weirdest subgenre. I haven't done an Amish movie, but I guess I'll have to put that on my bucket list.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see because so where I live in Philadelphia, there isn't like there's Pennsylvania Dutch that come into the city to like sell like farm goods and stuff, but I don't like the Amish is a little further west. But it would be interesting to like somehow show them the movies and be like, "What do you guys think of this?" You know.
In the same way, like when I watch a baseball movie, I'm like, this is totally an act. Or like my brother is a police officer. He watches movies. Says, that's not how it goes. Right. It would be very cool to have an actual Amish person vet these movies. That would be great.
Yes, perfect. Would. Well, why don't we take a break here? And then when we come back, we'll talk about Capital Conspiracy with Don the Dragon Wilson.
Hell yeah.
Aiden, available now. Told in a unique dual first-person narration style, Nadia and Aiden explores what it means to be American from the standpoint of two kids who grew up in France with an American mother. It also looks at how we define family beyond DNA and blood relations, when life isn't always that simple. You can find Nadia and Aiden on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and Kindle. All right, we are back, and yes, we're going to be looking at The Capital Conspiracy. So Don the Dragon Wilson movie directed by Fred Olen Ray, which I think his name was listed as like Ed something in the credits.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. I know he went by Ed Raymond for a lot
that's
of
his, what it was.
Like stock footage movies of the early 2000s.
Yes, that's what it was. Ed Raymond, yes. So on my phone, it didn't say, because when I was watching Tubi, it said directed by Ed Raymond, and I was like, I don't think this is Ed. I think this is a Fred Olen Ray movie. And then, and then I see it here on because on IMDb on your phone, it doesn't tell you the as so and so. It just tells you, So
this was on Tubi.
It was. Oh no, not Tubi. Roku channel. Roku channel is what I.
Okay,
that's right.
I was gonna say because I checked Tubi before. That was my first thought because all my DVDs are packed away in the garage. But so I had to dust off, and I was going to tell you this, and I forgot. I have one of my most legendary recorded VHS tapes, which has this recorded off of HBO or something. I don't know, something, along with like Cyber Zone and Talons of the Eagle, all on one tape. So it's a magical tape to me. But I managed to track that one down. That's how I watched it to review it for this podcast.
That's perfect. I think you posted on Instagram like one that had like movies from Spike, I think, right?
I talked about it on the Come Up It's podcast. Yeah, I have a couple of Spike tapes with like Cyborg Cop 3 and stuff like that on there. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was like golden age. So when I have Sean Malone to talk Van Damme movies, we talk about like how like a lot of those premiered on USA. But Spike TV, I mean, one of the ones I remember, because I think this movie was one that I bought a copy of it. I don't know what happened to that copy, but I bought a copy because Netflix didn't have it for some reason when I reviewed it in 2011. But I think I saw this one on Spike, and I can remember like when I'd be home from college and stuff, watching TV in the living room, and something like Rage and Honor 2 would be on, and watching it with my dad, and it's like Patrick Muldoon's getting beaten up by Richard Norton. Norton's like, "Come on, Tommy, come on!" My dad's like, "Yeah, come on, Tommy." It's like, oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, Spike for a period, I don't know, 2005, 2004 to 6, 7, something like that. They always had. It was like at 2 a.m. they would show a movie like that. Like I think that was my introduction to Jalal Murray, like talent. Billy Blank's movies were always on there. Yeah. So yeah, I had a permanent like recording set for like 2 a.m. Spike TV, whatever movie's on, I would just record, and it turned out to be a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. Like if I was awake and sober at that time, it would be Spike TV. If I was drunk, a lot of times it was like the TBS had the midnight showing of Roadhouse.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Yes, and I would pass out for the midnight showing of Roadhouse, wake up with the room spinning, and there'd be like an Andy Sedaris movie on. You'd see like Julie Strain and Bruce Penhall's names whipping across the screen, and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know."
Yeah, Andy Sedaris, he had a lot of stuff on Spike too. So yeah, tons of it. I miss the good old days, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fun that we have these movies on channels like Tubi and Roku. It's almost like they're the new cable TV. But there was something about it back then where you could just flip through the channels and be like, now it's like, USA is just Law and Order reruns and Fast and Furious TV edits. Spike doesn't even exist anymore. Did it turn into a country station? Because I know it was a country station, became Spike, but
wasn't it TNN first or something? Yeah. On the Come Up It's podcast, we talked for like an hour about Spike TV. It's like even their shows, Pros vs. Joes, and Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. I think that was Spike.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
So it just an amazing platform, and I do miss that. Like Tubi, I don't know if Tubi has a brand, which is partly why I think they stopped making their original movies, which sucks because those were really fun to do. But like it was a weird hybrid of very much like a Spike kind of brand of like, we're appealing to young men with these kind of not boner movies, but basically like low budget schlock. And then they had a strong urban following. So it's like they didn't really have an identity. I miss when platforms like Spike knew exactly who its audience was, and it's all they pandered to. I guess Lifetime kind of does that. It's just you and I probably are not that audience 100%.
No, because that's a great point too. Because it's like, Spike had like they just would grab those like '90s direct to video movies, and and there, because it's interesting when you watch those, there really isn't a lot in them. I mean, even when they would have like a sexual assault scene or something like that, they usually just cut away from it. So it's like there wasn't much beyond the swearing that would be bad for TV, even in the afternoon like that.
No, it was easy to modify to fit what they were looking for. And I mean, back then it was like if your local video store didn't have a copy of, I don't know, Snake Eater 3, the only chance you'd have to find it, pre-streaming was if it aired on TV. And that's how I found so many movies like Tiger Claws or, again, Cyborg Cop 3, which I had never, or I forget what it's actually called. But with Zagarino and Brian Genesee in it, it's unofficially Cyborg Cop 3, but there is another title of what it actually is called. I had never seen that movie until it was on Spike TV. So it was a nice little gift package you'd get every week. The flip through TV guide, what's airing on Spike this week that you can tape and then hold on to forever.
Right. Yeah. Because when I reviewed that one, Terminal Impact is the other name.
Terminal Impact. There you go.
Because when I reviewed it for the site, Netflix had there's a DVD that has parts 2 and 3 together. And
I have that DVD.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that was what I got from Netflix.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, that was it's funny when I go back and read some of these reviews from that period, the late 2000s, early 2010s when I was writing those reviews. It's very different from now, where now it's like, oh, you can get this streaming on Tubi in the States, or, oh, you've got to pay to rent it or whatever. Whereas like back then it was like, I don't, I would base it on like rentals because, Blockbuster and those places were still open then. And I'd be like, you shouldn't spend new release money on this. It's more like, the 2 for $1 Tuesday kind of deal,
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I remember because I've been reading your stuff since the 2000s, and like that was always because I was late to Netflix, even the DVD service. So that was also like your reviews is what kind of encouraged me, where you'd say like, oh, this is available on Netflix. So like, oh, I can finally see, I don't know, whatever the hell, TC 2000. I'm just one of these movies that you would say is available on that platform.
That's because and I don't know, like where you were in Vegas, it was the same thing where you'd get like a movie that would come from like most of them came from like the local Netflix depository, but then I'd get these ones that like
had come from across the country,
right? Yeah.
That would always be 1,000%. Yeah, you would have to. You get most of them local, but then there'd be some from like for me from Pennsylvania for whatever the hell.
Yeah, it's always such a trip, and I mean, again, like with these names like Don the Dragon Wilson, Cynthia Rothrock, it was like this thing where it was like, what are these movies that you can't get on anything? That like you go on Netflix and it's like they're not available at all, and you kind of have to dig for these things, and that was always kind of part of the fun too. Like you said, in some cases, cable TV would somehow have a copy of them, and they would share them.
Yeah. I forget which movie it was, but it was Michael Wirth, Lorenzo Lamas. It's a PM movie.
Oh yeah, it's like Final Fight or something like that, or
where it's barely it's more drama than it is action. But that was like a PM movie that I had never seen. And then like on my local ABC affiliate, like I remember I was up. I probably was drunk too. This is my early 20s, and it was like 1 a.m. and on ABC. It was airing that movie. And I'm like, how the hell did this wind up on like the local Vegas ABC affiliate at 1 a.m.? And it was wonderful to watch it finally, because it was a task of mine to watch all PM's work in my youth. But yeah, it's just movies would pop up in the strangest places. I always thought that was interesting, because then you're like, there's some form of discovery that you don't have now, where like the hunt isn't there as much because most things are on streaming. So I don't know. I miss that, and the preservation of it too. Like I said, I still have VHS tapes of things recorded off HBO and Spike, and I cherish these tapes because it's like it's a time capsule for something that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know, like down at my parents' house, or up at my parents' house, I have some bins of movies, and I remember going through one, and I saw a VHS, a SLP VHS
Uh-huh.
with
Yep.
a sticker on it that says Matt's Dumb Movies. And so one of my siblings was cleaning out, one of the rooms, and they must have seen that. I think there was another one where I had that Bill Maher Pizza Guy movie on it. And I think it said
Yeah.
something like Matt's Dumb Pizza Guy movie or something like that was a sticker on it. It's like,
We talked about that on the Comeuppance podcast too. Like they remember that was on Comedy Central like every day back in the day. That Pizza Man movie.
yes. Yeah, it was such a trip. I remember recording it, and I that was the other thing too. Like, recording from VHS, like you never knew what would cause an issue. And I think I was doing the old pausing the commercials, and
Uh
forgot
huh.
that I had paused the commercial, and I think I lost like 10 minutes of it because I was like, oh, I never restarted the recording, and it's like,
Sure. Yeah.
and of course, who'd have thought now that the commercials themselves would have value, that people would want to see the old commercials.
That blows my mind because again,
Yeah.
it's not like it's that long ago. It
Right.
was, I mean, we're probably close to the same age, but like, there's nostalgia now for the mid 2000s, and it's like
Right.
it's crazy that these things aren't preserved because who needed to save a Kleenex commercial from 2004? But there's people out there who'd be like, oh, I remember that. I want to watch that commercial again. So it's weird, but it's very cool in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is. It's and I think it's another area too. Again, where like something like a Capital Conspiracy that when you're watching it on Roku or something, you're getting new commercials, and you're getting
Yeah.
commercials that are targeted specifically for what they think your demographic is, based off of what you've watched in other time, on other times. And it's like,
Yeah.
so. I mean, I don't know. It's like Vegas, maybe I don't know if it's the same. Where here in Philly, the big thing is online gambling. On your phone.
Mm.
And so it's just commercial after commercial of like, oh, hey, Wayne Gretzky thinks I should bet, hockey games on my phone, and play blackjack on my phone, or, oh, look
Yeah.
at this, I can play slots on my phone while I'm waiting in line at CVS, it's like,
Mm.
yeah.
No, I mean, not really. We just can go gamble, I guess, if you want to just go. Not much marketing behind it anymore. But yeah, no, I get. Yeah, there's very strategic, local. But that's the other thing I miss is like the local commercials where you get like the low budget. There was a guy here in Vegas who I don't remember what the name of the dealership was, but his whole shtick was he would be the motivational Chris Farley's motivational speaker, and he just blatantly ripped that off and be like, "Come down and look at a Kia." Like he would just like just totally stealing the character. And I'm like, where is that backed up? I hope somewhere out there someone has backed up every one of that dude's commercials because they were terrible. But this is art. I want to preserve this, and I would love to see a compilation of all his awful motivational speaker things. So yeah, the local commercials is what I think I miss the most.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's one that they used to show here. There's a cheesesteak place called Steak 'em Up, where it's got like this like caricature of a gangster guy with holding a cheesesteak like it's a gun. One of the worst cheesesteak places here in Philly. It's just, I mean, it's horrible.
Really?
But yeah,
Okay.
it's not good. I mean, they're kind of buried in South Philly, so it's not like if you were visiting Philly, you'd have to really search it out anyway.
Yeah.
But they had these commercials that they have the shake 'em up or shake it up, the cars. They would play
Uh-huh.
Stake 'em Up as instead, as a
Okay.
thing. But one of the commercials was like, like they were having people audition to be in their commercial. And this one guy was like some over the top umpire guy who they, was like,
Mhm.
they kind of threw him out because he was a jerk. And anyway, in like 2019, my mom was visiting and we went to a Phillies game and it was really cold. It was like, March. And so it was freezing out. And there's this guy coming around giving people hot chocolate. He was like an usher, or like one of the people that's supposed to be selling stuff in the crowd. And he was just handing out free hot chocolate. And I was like, where do I know that guy from? And it wasn't until I got home and I was like, oh, if I'd remembered it then, I would have been like, hey, are you the umpire from the Steak 'em Up commercial? And it's like,
Oh
who
my
knows if he
God.
gets that a lot or what, but I was just like, where do I know that guy from? And that was what it was.
That's crazy. No, because they become like huge celebrities,
Right.
but only in this little pond of where you live. So,
Mhm.
no, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's like you said, this whole ecosystem, this whole thing now, it's just a whole different thing, and like even like you said about the Lifetime movies, where it's like in the '90s, it was like Meredith Baxter Birney or Joanna Kearns like fighting the system, and
Yeah.
trying to get justice for somebody that way, and I don't think Meredith Baxter Birney or Joanna Kearns would do one of the modern ones where they're getting chased around by, Eric Roberts with
Yeah.
a knife or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're totally right.
Yeah. But it's like a whole different thing where they're selling to a different market. There's people that, they're looking for something completely different. And we've kind of seen this whole change, but it is kind of one of the fun things about the fact that like, yeah, some of these stations, like a Don the Dragon Wilson, for example, someone who, he kind of left movies in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And so there's a large audience that doesn't really even know who he is. And hopefully they can kind of stumble upon these and be like, what is this? Like, I don't know what this is, but this seems kind of cool.
No, and it's funny because like sometimes aging terribly is a good thing in a way of like, when I watch like teen thrillers from when I was in high school, which actually I watch a lot of now just to get ideas for Lifetime movies nowadays. My theory with Lifetime, this wasn't your question or anything, but I'm gonna say it. My theory with Lifetime movies is if you take any Freddie Prinze Jr. romantic comedy from the early 2000s, but just make it, instead of a romantic comedy, it's about a psycho, it works. So basically any early 2000s teen comedy, just make it a thriller, and the same story, well, all the same beats will work if you just take the comedy out of it. So that's my theory with that. So these old things that may not age well, like one of my movies for Lifetime is very heavily in the world of social media and iPhone or your smartphones and stuff like that. And the movie came out in 2021 and it's already super outdated. So I'm waiting for the day like 15 years from now when like a teenager will discover this movie and it will be like the most out of touch, out of date thing ever. And then maybe it'll be cool again because like, look how retro this is. So it's weird.
It is such a strange, I mean, like, like watching, Capital Conspiracy, I mean, it's 1996. I mean, we're talking about 30 years now that this movie came out. And it is kind of crazy to think that, because like, like when I reviewed this, the movie, it was in 2011. But even like thinking about, starting the site, like, the late 2000s, or like, like you're talking about, doing like the Red Brown articles, instead of interviewing him in the late 2000s, we weren't that far removed from this stuff. This was like, it was only like 10 years. But also it didn't feel like things were changing as quickly. Or this is Capital Conspiracy is 98, not 96, but still the same idea. It's like, this movie feels like it's like in some retro place from some other time, but then on the other hand, it's like, no, it's not that, like it shouldn't feel like that old, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, and you're right. Like the 10 years from 98 to 2008 or 11, when you reviewed this, the change that had occurred in that period is far less drastic than the 10 years following that. So I agree. Like this movie, it had been a while. I mean, I love this movie. That's why I recommended this particular one, because I feel it was a little ahead of its time, because it was throwing in a little more plot than these movies were used to, especially at that time. Because this was toward the end of the wave of direct-to-video. Like this is late 90s, not the heart of it in the mid 90s. But the whole like ESP thing. There was that movie Suspect Zero.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which was it literally is almost the same kind of story. And that came out in like 2004 and was a big movie with Aaron Eckhart or whatever. But totally, I feel like this one, it felt like I was watching something from ancient times. It just, it's with his laptop, there's scenes with Don on his laptop, and it's just like, my God, everything just feels so old.
Right. I mean, he's checking his Earthlink email, and it's like, you look at that thing and it's just like, like the laptop is one of those big unwieldy, I mean, it's like the fact that it was a laptop in 1998 was supposed to be this huge thing, like how, on top of it is, they don't show him hooking the laptop up to the phone line, because in 98, like, I don't think there's any hotels that had a T1, connection or anything like that, right? Like you're hooking up to the phone line. And even then you probably couldn't even dial out with your phone, with your, right? Because then you have to like dial 9 to get out or something like that. You'd have to like go into like AOL and organize all that. But yeah, it's like you're seeing that happen there. But it was like cutting edge for that time. It's like, this is a big deal in 1998 that Don the Dragon Wilson's getting emails from some cryptic guy.
Exactly. And I think even on like on IMDb, I was looking at it, the genres that it lists of like, what this movie falls under. It was like action and sci-fi. And I'm like, man, that is a stretch for sci-fi, I guess a little bit, but I wonder, maybe for the time this felt more science. I don't know. It struck me that sci-fi would be the second genre for this particular film.
Yeah, it's not like Cybertruck or ones that he did were like legit
Sure.
sci-fi.
Yeah, exactly. Love Cybertracker 1 and 2.
Oh,
Those are fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's the thing with Wilson is that and one of the I was looking at, I mean he only does like 6 more movies after this before he goes on hiatus. So he does The Last Sentinel in '07,
Yeah.
and I think the thing that caused him to go on hiatus, he was supposed to do a movie. I think it was like an R.L.S. Frazier movie, and they decided to cast his character when they found out they could get Ray Liotta. They cast his character with Ray
Whoa.
Liotta, and he got kind of written out of the movie, and he was just so annoyed by that. But when you look at his movies, kind of after this, there is that sense because the late '90s is probably like '99, 2000 is when Seagal and Van Damme start doing direct-to-video movies,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of the people that were doing. And then the other thing too is like companies like Sony were getting involved in the DTV world, and so it was like,
Yep.
Corman didn't have the money to make the movies he wanted to make. PM was pretty much, they were close to done at this point. I mean, '98, they 2000, 2001, they're kind of done. So it was like he didn't have the places to make the movies that he wanted to make, and then he couldn't go to the other places because they were like, well, we got Seagal and we got Van
Exactly.
Damme.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It kind of took the middle fell out where there was like the low budget guys, the middle guys, and then the high level guys. When the high level guys moved to the middle, it was kind of because with most of these guys, there was that window in the early 2000s where Don the Dragon went away. Gruner didn't do anything. I remember the early 2000s. Lorenzo Lamas wasn't putting out the same kind of stuff. So yeah, there was Speakman obviously was done during that time. But he's still done. He doesn't really do anything anymore. But yeah, no, I totally agree. It was like the big guys moved down, and I am so nostalgic now for those Seagal and Van Damme movies that came out in the early 2000s that I thought were pure shit, and most of them were.
yes,
But I look back and I'm like, man, we had it good with Shadow Man and Into the Sun, and
yes.
all those things that were so much better than what they do now,
Right.
if they do anything at all.
Well, yeah, because like with those Seagal ones, one of the things because I've been doing a series of those with Scott Murphy, and what we've discovered is that those movies would be good if it wasn't for Seagal, right? Like he does everything he can to ruin the movies, and so it's like nowadays, right? Those movies wouldn't be good because they just wouldn't put any budget behind them, and it's like they wouldn't,
Sure.
But back then it was like they were putting millions of dollars because, like, oh, I mean, the thing that we always forget is that Seagal was only like in the early 2000s. I mean, he had Exit Wounds, and then
That's dead.
yeah, and it was like suddenly he was like still kind of considered viable at that time. And so if you were making a direct-to-video movie, if you're like Andrew Stevens, who is the producer on this movie with his Royal Oaks Entertainment, it's like, oh, we're going to get Seagal for our Black Dawn or whatever. This is a huge coup for us. And then they get him on set, and it's like he's not doing his reverse shots. He's not showing up on time. He wants to rewrite the script into his own thing. He's not doing fight scenes. All this kind of stuff, and you're like, wait a second, what was I paying for? I thought I'm getting Exit Wounds, and now I'm getting this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My favorite would be, and I think I saw you guys did it. The submarine movie with Gary Daniels.
Submerged. Yes, we did that one recently.
Yes. I got to listen to you guys talk about that one because, like, that's if there is ever a behind the scenes I want to hear, it's on that movie because obviously Anthony Hickox is very known in one genre, and Seagal is not a part of that genre. So how did they wind up together? And then the movie turned into just a standard Seagal movie when it was supposed to be like initially like a Deep Rising type monster movie or something. So like I don't know if you guys go into that, but I gotta listen to that podcast because that movie is insane.
Yes, no, we tracked down some information on that, and not only that, but also the country of Uruguay was not happy with the way they were depicted in that movie. They were depicted as like sort of this third world, sort of dictatorship, banana republic kind of thing, when they've had like a democracy and like a very like participant democracy for like decades, and plus they were like. It was like shots of Bulgaria that were passing for Uruguay. They're like, we don't have mountains in Uruguay. We don't, it's like, but
I'll have to put that. I have no memory of Uruguay even being involved in that.
Right, me neither. I forgot to. Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, one of the things with that one has Vinnie Jones in it, and so Scott and I both being EPL fans, we did go on some tangents about English soccer. So
okay,
so that happens as well. But yeah, Submerged. It's a trip. It's and it's like again, it's one of those things where like you start to hear, oh, once Seagal shows up, suddenly the whole thing just gets scrapped.
It just crash and burns. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things with Wilson is that, he had this thing going in the 90s where it was like PM movies and Corman movies. And he was interviewed recently on, I think it was the Ring of Fire episode of the PM podcast. He was interviewed on there. And John was asking him about that. And he was saying how, like, he had friends like Chris Penn in the business who were just like,
yes.
They couldn't believe that he was getting signed to these multiple film contracts just out of the gate. Like, Chris Penn would have to like work the whole year to get movies and get on stuff. And Wilson knew going into the year, okay, I've got 2 PM movies and 2 Corman movies. He was living well. And it is kind of, like, this is towards the end of his Corman phase as well. I think this might be, Moving Target's the last one I think he does with Corman.
Which was a remake of like Blood Fist 8 or something,
right,
wasn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah. Is it Blood Fist 8 or Moving Target that has the exploding Beamish beer?
Oh, that's got to be Moving Target.
Okay.
I think I can't remember.
Yeah.
But it's,
because Blood Fist 8, is that the one where he has the son who has the electric, the boombox that shocks the bully in school?
Yes. Or maybe that is Moving. I don't know. I thought I feel like that might be Moving Target.
I know. It's hard. Yeah.
In Moving Target, he goes to Ireland.
Right. Exactly. Okay. That's right. So I think that's the one. I think that's the one with the sun and everything. Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it's a trip. Like, when you look at it, like, I think Hollywood Safari might have been his last PM movie, which is just a kids movie that just happens to have him in it. Just kind of a trip. But it's kind of funny watching it at this time because 95 when he was doing Blood Fists and Cyber Tracker and all that stuff. It's only 3 years before this, and it's amazing how quickly the bottom falls out on these things.
Yeah, no, because I remember, I mean, my God, one of my favorite little periods of these was getting into them, after they had come out. I wasn't renting them as they came out because I would have been like 7 for some of these things. But like, the Hollywood Video by my house would have like, $1 VHS rentals Monday through Thursday or whatever it was. And finding Blood Fist 1 and then saying, oh, there's 8 more of them. Okay, so I know what my week is. And it would just be going back every day and getting the next Blood Fist. Which I think get better. I actually am not a fan of Blood Fist 1 or 2, like at all, really. I think the sequels, the 6th one, the Die Hard in a Missile Silo, is absolutely my favorite Blood Fist.
What's your favorite? I think mine is 4, the one with Gary
That one's
Daniels.
great too. Yes, that one's really great too. That's my number 2 is number 4.
Yeah.
So I think they got better. So they were just such an amazing. It's so great that he built an amazing back catalog in such a short time because. That was what I mean, there was probably a summer where I mostly watched Don the Dragon Wilson movies on VHS, between the Cyber Trackers and the Ring of Fires. Ring of Fire 3 is my favorite. I got to put that at my probably top 5 PM movies. It's just so batshit. I love it.
It's beautiful. It is.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's a beautiful movie.
I mean, how do you start a movie? So that's what I covered way back with Will from Exploding Helicopter because he's got an exploding helicopter.
Oh, yes, exactly. Right in the opening scene, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I love about that movie is that he's a doctor and he's doing his rounds and a motorcycle, a biker just shows up and he beats the crap out of the biker. And it's like, nothing. I don't think anything sums up the for-profit healthcare system in America better than that the doctor is sending people to the hospital.
No, it's pretty great. I love that movie structurally as a dorky screenwriter. It makes no goddamn sense. Like the opening scene, like it's not even just like a cold open. It's like an extended 15-minute scene that has nothing to do with the plot. And like, they don't even get to what you would call Act 2 until like 40 minutes in. Like nothing makes sense. The structure's all off, but it's beautiful. Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, it is. I think it's of his PM movies. I think it's my favorite of his PMs. Cool. Yeah, I absolutely love that one myself. It's just so much fun.
More than Cyber Tracker?
Yeah, I think I like it more than Cyber. Yeah, of his PMs, I think so. Because I mean, even that opening scene where it's like he's doing like martial arts with the guy from the first. No Retreat, No Surrender, like, the dad. And they're practicing martial arts. And then you've got like an elderly guy with a Uzi shooting at him from a helicopter, and then Wilson like runs and he's like hanging off a building with a pistol,
Yep.
blows up
Yep.
the helicopter, and then it's like, oh, you know what? Instead of going home for the day, because that's what most people would do in a
He goes
PM
and
movie,
clocks back
right?
in.
He just goes and does his rounds where a biker just shows up, and then like to your point, but kind of the screenwriting part, it's just like, well, we need our action sequence here. What can we do to make Wilson beat the crap out of people, and you want to see him beat the crap out of them? Oh, we'll
Sure.
put poachers. Just have poachers just show up, right? Because it's like in PM movies it was either poachers or racists. You want to see either of them get their comeups. Now it's human traffickers. That's another group, but it's like what I call baddie in a can. It's just like have them jump off the pickup truck and let Wilson roundhouse kick them.
Exactly, and he's got his son there with him who starts like he starts punching like a potato chip bag because he's watching his dad beat up the bad guys. So he starts. And there's the park ranger gal who looks so much like the girl. Sorry, I'll try to help you steer it back to Capital Conspiracy. Looks so much like Alexander Keith. She's got like the short blonde hair. I for a second I thought maybe it was the same woman, but it's
Bobby Johnston, right? Who did other?
Yes,
yeah.
But they have a very similar look to Alexander Keith in this film with the short kind of blonde hair and the badass kind of look.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Now she doesn't get nude in Ring of Fire 3 like
she does not.
Sandra Keith does here, right? That's one of the big differences between doing a PM film and a
Corman.
I think the only PM film that had nudity like that was the two, or maybe just the one of the two Anna Nicole Smith ones, that Skyscraper.
Oh yeah, Skyscraper.
Right.
I put that movie on because legitimately it's a fun PM movie.
Yeah.
If you put Don the Dragon in the lead, I would enjoy it as much as Anna Nicole. Maybe actually probably more, I should say. But like she's naked a lot in that movie is my point. And so I put it on, not at all saying I want to watch a naked lady in a movie, but I wanted to put on to watch a good old fashioned PM movie that I hadn't seen in years. And my wife walks in and she's like, "What on earth are you watching?" And I'm like, "Honey, I swear it's for the action." Which I wasn't lying either. Right, I don't know what that says about me, but
it is legitimately like one of the best action movies. And,
sure.
But it's like you said, it's like they were like, well, we got Anna Nicole Smith, so we've got to shoehorn this Playboy, after midnight element in, or Playboy after dark element in. And it's like, you're growing up and you're watching a Van Damme movie, and your parents walk in on the scene where he's, his bare ass cheeks are hanging out while he's doing like this like steamy softcore porn sex scene. They're like, what did you rent? It's the Van Damme. This is not the Van Damme. Yes, it's the Van Damme movie. I did not rent any. I didn't go behind the beaded curtain and convince the guy. It's like, now Capital Conspiracy. It's like you said, it's a little bit unique because it doesn't quite follow the Wilson against the world paradigm. It's like the world is against him, but he doesn't know it until the end, I guess, is maybe what it is.
Yeah, no, it's a little outside his, and like I said, you got to give some respect. I actually, caring about the writing side of things, I clicked on the guy who wrote this, and this is his only credit, which really makes me think it was a pseudonym. Yeah. But even with pseudonyms, a lot of times nowadays, IMDb has been good about linking them in some way. So I don't know if this is his only credit or not, but there, credit goes to them for trying something a little different with this one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, because you might be right that like with the pseudonym, because like, obviously Fred Olen Ray went under a pseudonym here, and there was like this mindset, I guess, right, that you didn't want to have too many things out there. I guess maybe they knew IMDb was coming and they didn't want to have like 500 credits or something. I don't know.
I forget which movie it was. One of the stock footage movies from the early 2000s, like the Phoenician movies with Dudikoff, and although that Fred Olen Ray did a bunch and Jim Wynorski did a few. But on one of those commentary tracks, they go into that with the writer and the director. I think it was Fred Olen Ray, or maybe it was one of the. But either way, the writer talks about how like he used his wife's name for like half the things he wrote for them, because it was just like the buyer said, "Why do you have the same writer on every movie? Like, we want to have the illusion that there's many artists working on these, not the same four guys." So yeah, it was a interesting. I don't think that exists as much anymore, which is again another lost thing.
Yeah, because that Nate Hill, who's done movies that Jay Harang's covered, he was saying that like when he would make his movies, because he's like like director, writer, and actor in his movies a lot of times, that when he would ship them over to America, they'd be like, well, we don't want the same person doing all three parts. So he would like list himself as producer and have somebody else listed as director. I have somebody else be the director. And I was like, I never really thought of that. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess maybe it'd be more likely to think it's a vanity project or something. I don't know.
I think that may be it too, because if you look at examples like Sector 4, not to just keep ripping on Gruner, but directed, produced, story by, starring, it really does sometimes it lessens the value of it, because you hope a movie gets made because several people vetted it and said this is a good idea and worthy of being made. But when you have the same name repeated over and over again, it may just seem like, no, this is a vanity project, which, I mean, that certainly exists, and it's easier than ever nowadays to make a vanity project, because you can make a movie for very little these days. So maybe I see his point, is what I'm saying. I might even agree.
Yeah, no, it's something I never thought about before. I mean, I think of like, one of my favorite movies ever was Citizen Kane, and that was like, directed and acted by, Orson Welles. That's, I guess, I always thought like, hey, that's, or like, another one of my favorites is Bad Taste by Peter Jackson. So,
oh, sure. Yeah.
So it's like, I guess it makes sense. And I guess the other thing too is that, those two were directors, whereas like, I guess like if you're, if you're not known for being a director, or, I guess, that's another piece of it. But, but like Fred Olen Ray, right? It's like this whole thing of like, now he's doing Lifetime. He doesn't do like I don't know if he does like the full on Lifetime. I think he does like the Christmas movies and stuff like that.
He's done thrillers.
Oh, he does the thrillers too. Yeah,
he's done some thrillers. I've always hoped our paths would cross, but it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, he does the thriller. He mostly does Christmas, but he has done some thrillers. My favorite weird name that's popped up, and I'm going to forget his real name, but God bless it, I prefer his character's name. Johnny Cage is directing Lifetime movies. What's the actor's name?
Oh, Alan. Is it Ash? Was it Ash?
Lyndon Ashby?
Lyndon Ashby. Okay,
yeah, he's directing Lifetime thrillers, and I'm like, my God, one day if I write something that Johnny Cage directs, that's a dream come true. So yeah, there's a lot of weird names. Jim Wynorski, I don't think has touched Lifetime, but that'd be cool too, to see all these guys pop up and do it.
Yeah, I remember my wife and I were watching. I think it was the Christmas in Palm Springs. It was called something like that. The Christmas Gift with the late Michelle Trachtenberg, and and it had Lawrence Hilton Jacobs was in it as well. And I was like, oh, Fred Olen Ray directed. She's like, who's that? Because sometimes she just wants to just like kind of chill out to some of these bad Christmas movies.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm watching it, and I'm like, and one of the kind of the funny things was that he would like insert these like little moments, and like my wife's like, oh, that little boy looks like he's like from like the 50s, and I'm like, I think he did that on purpose. I think he would do things like that just to kind of like, I don't know, make the movies, make them more his own movies, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that. Totally.
Yeah. But it's funny thing about him, sort of as the gun for hire director in that sense, where Corman's having him work, and then I guess this was like a co-production, I guess, with Corman and Conquered New Horizons, and then Andrew Stevens is Royal Oaks Entertainment.
Royal Oaks, yeah.
And then what's the other guy's name? Amritaj.
Ashok Amritaj. Yeah. Like that.
Yeah. He was involved as well. So like all these names that were kind of together. And I mean, again, I think if you're Andrew Stevens, maybe this movie didn't do as well as you would have wanted it to, and you're thinking like, hey, what's our next step? And I think it's 5 years later is when they reach for Seagal and get him in Black Dawn, and it was a complete disaster for them. I mean, I think the one thing you could say about Wilson is that Wilson showed up and he did his job, and I've never heard anything about him being a diva on set.
No, I've actually never heard anything negative about him ever. I like he's pretty open about talking shit about Van Damme, which of course I love Van Damme, but I could see an actual practitioner of the martial arts saying like, well, here I am, the world champion 18 times over, and then you got this Belgian guy. He's not the real deal. So I could see it, but his openness of talking shit in interviews about Van Damme, I always enjoyed. But he seems like a nice guy. And he seemed to genuinely enjoy the movies he made. Like I've seen interviews where he talks so positively about PM Entertainment or his work with PM Entertainment. So I think he was in on it, meaning he knew, in the same way people know when they're making a piece of shit movie, he maybe embraced that and just enjoyed it and brought the best he could. Because his fights were always consistent. I would say not a single fight scene he's ever done, this movie including, is an A+. Like it's not like an Isaac Florentine pretty fight with, during this time Wire Fu was just about to come in. But his fights are always very basic. Kind of stiff but charming and still fun. So he always brought his what his A game was, and you got to dig that.
Yeah, and Art Camacho was somebody who worked with on here. So going back to Gruner, I know, like you said, we don't want to dump on him too much, but they misspelled Camacho's name in the credits here too. So
Oh,
it's
did
like,
they?
yes. So, and the funny thing is, I checked it because he plays one of the henchmen. He plays one of
Yes.
and then he also is listed as the fight coordinator. So I noticed it on the fight coordinator. I was like, did they spell it wrong both times? I thought maybe they were going to pull like you were saying with Gruner.
Yep.
Maybe he was misspelling names to make it look like he had more people working on the movie, but no, they misspelled it both times.
Oh, that's terrible. Well,
Yeah.
did you catch? So, did you see Art Camacho in the scene he was in?
I did, yes.
Did you see who else was in that gaggle of henchmen?
Yes. Oh, who was the? Oh, yeah. Who was the other guy there? And
It was Fredo and Ray.
That's right. I was meant to write it down. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool when they because that scene got reused in one of those Dudikoff stock footage movies. I think it was the space one they did, which was really bad. The only thing good about that movie was the commentary track. But that scene, I believe, got recycled in that movie where instead of Don, it's Ice-T shooting all the henchmen who were breaking into his hotel room. So it was cool to see that because I forgot that's where the scene originated, was in Capital Conspiracy.
Yeah, that's always kind of fun how they do that. The different thing. I mean, my favorite is Agent Red, the Dolph movie where they steal from Stormcatcher at the beginning. And
I'm looking at my copy of that on my shelf in my garage right now. As we speak. I'm touching it with my hand.
Yes, that's perfect. Excellent. Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, So I just recently got a DVD player for my computer because now with laptops nowadays they don't have DVD. So I got a portable one. So now it's like it brings all of my DVDs back into play where I can
cool.
Get images from them and all of that kind of stuff. And so for the longest time it was like if it's not on streaming, I wasn't able to do anything with it. And so I saw Agent Red was in the box there because I think I had every Dolph movie up until like One in the Chamber.
Yeah.
So I mean, now he doesn't. Most again, like everybody else, his movies aren't on physical media as much. So
no, it's just terrible. Yeah.
Now with this movie, I was trying to think like there's some great highlights in it. I mean, I guess like starting from the beginning where Wilson and a couple other secret agents, they think they're like kind of busting up some sort of deal that's happening with people. And
yes,
you've got one dude pushing you've got a woman. We find out later that she's a guy pushing a stroller, and then you've got another guy pushing like a laundry basket away. And this is where we learn that Wilson has an ESP of some sort, right, with this like the flashing light or whatever, and he knows that it's the guy pushing the laundry cart is the one that is escaping with whatever it was that they needed to find.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, did they even explain what it was that he was getting?
I was just going to ask. I don't even think it was brought up again. No. I think that served simply as a plot device to have what happened next, which was one of the other agents gets blowed up, saving a baby carriage. Is that what it was? The guy dressed as an old lady pushing the baby carriage. It goes out in the street, car hits it, and cop goes out to save it. Boom, explodes.
Well, you're right, because he had a tape recorder, like a big, massive tape recorder too. It's like it's like if you're trying to pretend that you've got a baby carriage in there, like, do you need the big, massive? I guess they needed it, and then like the bomb, like this little tiny bomb is underneath it, and and you kind of just knew, right? You knew, like, oh boy, if he's going for that, and it's kind of funny because this movie doesn't really fit the PM like every 5 to 10 minutes, action sequence. And the action sequences aren't like these sort of over the top, like, Spiro Rosados and Colas McKay are like high on, I don't know, Fruity Pebbles or something, right? Well, maybe not cast any aspersions on what they might have been doing to come up with some of these ridiculous action scenes that they were doing there. But you don't get that same kind of level of action in this where like cars are flipping all over the place. And but at the very beginning here, I think this is kind of like some of the most action we get to as the movie goes on, it's more shootouts and things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the bar fight in the beginning there is pretty great. But you're right, it's a lot of car. The scene in the parking garage later in the film, which just employs a lot of, I guess it's very low budget in the action and how it's presented. Like the scene in the parking garage, there's a moment where the car backs up toward Don and he just ducks down to the floor and the bumper hits above him, but you can totally tell it's a reverse shot. So very like no frills to the action scenes in this one. No explosions really. Even the train fight at the end is very basic. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why I enjoyed it a little more, a little more intimate, less blowing shit up, I guess, maybe.
Well, because going back to that train scene at the end where he's fighting, I think there's a lot of Fred Olen Ray mainstays, and I think Paul Michael Robinson, who plays the poor man's Frank Zagarino.
I was going to ask. He's got the blonde flat top, and I didn't know this guy. I know I've seen him before, but I couldn't remember. Is he just a regular with Fred Olen Ray that I don't remember?
I think so. I think that's what. I mean, he was young. He was born in 1970, so he wasn't even 30 yet. So,
oh my God,
right when he calls Wilson an old man, it's almost more like Wilson's not the old man. You're like too young to be a CIA agent, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that train scene, I don't think they did a lot of doubling for that scene. I think it was like this slow moving train because on the credits it said that they got the train from some San Diego like historical train society.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess they I wonder if they just kind of let it go slow because the other thing too, I don't know if you noticed with the fights, it almost felt like Wilson was trying to keep his balance on this moving train while he did some of the kicks and punches and stuff. So I wonder if it was actually moving the whole time and they were just trying not to die or not hurt themselves.
I mean, that's entirely possible. Like I said, Don has always had, and it probably comes from being an actual fighter, at least at that time. Like his fights in the movies always feel a little stiff and rigid. Like he'll throw a punch and he'll hold the conclusion of that punch for just like an extra beat to where it feels a little slower than what you were used to at the time. I mean, The Matrix was the next year. And obviously, even Seagal stuff is very fast with quick cuts. So Don was a lot of, very boring framing. We're going to do waist up, stay on you, and he'll execute his moves. I'm sure I'm not a martial artist. I'm sure they're legit. They're accurate, but it just always felt very stiff. So it's entirely possible it's what it was on he was keeping his balance on the train, but I didn't pick up on it. Maybe it's just because I'm used to him kind of looking a little stiff anyway with his frame.
Well, that could be too, right? That could be like what I thought was him trying to keep his balance was him just delivering a stiff punch.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And I'm not knocking the guy. I know he knows more than I do, obviously, but it's just it sometimes there's a moment in this where he cracks toward the end, spoilers, sorry, with Alexander Keith after he outsmarts her with the magazine and her rifle. And they have a little quick, back and forth with some punches, and then he cracks her over the head with the magazine. Right. And to me, I was like, oh, that's great, because it's felt to him that felt like a Jackie Chan move, because he very rarely introduced props or fought with weapons, and it was mostly just him kicking and spinning and backhanding with his fists and stuff like that. So to see him use that was like a special effect to me. Like, oh, he cracked her in the head with the magazine.
Yeah, because one of the things too, I think, like you said about the props, is that I feel like by this point in 1998, he'd gotten a little bit better about holding a gun. It looked better in this movie where he was, and maybe too because we're comparing it to Alexander Keith, who did not look great holding the AK-47.
Oh no, that was bad. Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah, so maybe he just looked better in comparison. I always think about that because, like, when he started when he came back to doing movies in the 2010s, he did a movie with Matt Mullen. I can't remember what that movie was called. Death Fighter with Matt Mullins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Matt Mullins was still trying to get the hang of being an actor. But Wilson looks pretty good next to him as an actor. And it's like, was it because Matt Mullins is still trying to get the hang of it and Wilson looked good? Or was like, no, was Wilson gotten better at doing this?
Sure, yeah.
Now,
go ahead. Really quick, my favorite, this is just, it's not related to this film, but it's Wilson adjacent, so I thought it'd be worth mentioning. When he went on his, sabbatical, was not doing as many films, there was that movie in 04, 05, that Extreme Fighter or Virtual Fighter, whatever it was called. Man, that was maybe, for that time, one of the most anticipated movies for me, because I'm like, man, you got Don the Dragon coming back, Cynthia Rothrock, Lorenzo Lamas, more people I'm probably forgetting. And it just stunk so bad. But I was so excited for that movie, especially when they released here's the DVD. I was working in a video store, so maybe I just saw the list of special features on the DVD, because back then people cared about stuff like that. And I was like, man, there's commentary tracks, a documentary. So I was eagerly awaiting that movie. I did not like the movie, but it was cool to see all the behind the scenes on that one, and how much Don really had control over that movie. It seemed like he produced it, but he was overlooking all the action and all the stuff on there. So it was cool just to kind of get an inside view of that during that time.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, because that was directed by, speaking of Art Camacho, he was a director on that. So,
Yep.
and I think, again, they'd worked together for a while, and he knew him, and it's like, yeah, why don't you, so like you said, like he would have a lot of input and kind of have the movie come out the way he wanted to. And yeah, I remember reviewing that one for the site and just being like, when you see all those names, you just think like, I mean, now of course you see all those names and you're like, is that a Nevsky movie? Like what, like why,
Exactly. Yeah.
why is everybody in this? But back then you're right. Like, these movies, like you said, like for me at that time, it was Netflix, where Netflix would be like, hey, this movie's coming out, and you'd be waiting. Like I remember Command Performance from Dolph. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
waiting for it to change its status on Netflix, it just, keep waiting for that status to change. But yeah, also in the video stores, I mean, I can remember, like the Van Damme and Seagal movies in particular. I don't know if, when you were working the video store, if you saw this, that like there would be a lot of copies of those movies.
Oh, a whole wall. Yeah. No, I actually, I have it somewhere still, like not a standee, but like a mid-sized little punch out poster for Submerged, the Seagal movie. Because when we got it, it would be like not a whole wall, but a whole shelf of a wall, half DVD, half VHS, all of Submerged with this little standee in the middle of it. I think I stole it. I don't know, or maybe they're going to throw it away, and I just was like, I'll take it. But I still have it in a possession somewhere. So yeah, these movies were. I mean, the Seagal and Van Damme and Dolph to a certain extent. I remember, oh God, what was the Jerry Springer movie he did?
Oh, Defender, the Defender.
Defender, yeah. He directed that as well, yeah.
Right, yes.
Like that was a big release too. So, or Detention, which is, I love Detention. I love that one so much.
I do too, yes.
But big release, big things. And, Wilson, Extreme Fighter, it wouldn't get as much at that time. It was obviously a lot smaller release. I don't think people were into Wilson as much as Dolph or Seagal. But yeah, these things it was cool to see them get big, out there in a big way, even though it's direct to video.
Well, and you can see where the money was, right? Like, okay, with a Seagal movie or Van Damme movie, why they'd put the money behind that back then that they won't now, because it's like, well, I mean, how many blockbusters were there, Hollywood Video and all of the chains? And if all of them are going to buy 10 copies, you're talking about like tens of thousands of copies just from those places. And then I guess, once they've done their run in after the new release period, then they sell them for like $5 a piece, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And, now that market doesn't exist anymore. I don't know what Hulu pays, for a Van Damme movie, but I can't imagine it's anywhere near the number.
No.
Yeah,
that's why I think like it's the whole middle part of the low budget industry is gone. It's either big movies or very, very, very small movies, and the mid range guys are kind of gone. Like, which I think is where all those guys fit at the time, like the Don, the Dragon, the Gruners, and stuff like that. And now they're forced to either do either nothing or the low budget. So the Nevsky thing is the anomaly right now. He's the one that is still making those movies, but they have to be selling huge overseas, because I don't know anyone over here who watches or like. I mean, I shouldn't say watches. I know plenty of people who watch them, but no one's enjoying them. At least in my opinion, I think they're all terrible. Or the guy, and you'll know his name, the Charles Bronson guy.
Oh, Bronzy, Robert Bronzy.
Robert Bronzy. I mean, God bless, but what a disgusting career. Like, I mean, he literally has built a career on just looking like Charles Bronson. But, people, he's got a career, so who am I to judge? But.
Well, and that's, kind of thinking, we were talking about Blood Fist 4 with Gary Daniels, another name kind of like Wilson. Daniels was never quite at the level of like a Wilson or a Rothrock. So when the bottom fell out for him, it was even worse. And it's like, now he's like playing the baddie in a Bronzy movie.
I saw that one Bronzy movie I've actually watched was the Gardener,
Right.
because they have Gary Daniels. So I put that one on whatever platform it was on, and of course I didn't enjoy it, but Gary Daniels, totally one of those guys who I think should have been higher. Cold Harvest is absolutely, I think it's a masterpiece for the direct-to-video genre. So he and Genesee is in that one too, Brian Genesee. So he was great.
Well, because that's the thing too with the direct-to-video world. It seems like those are the two names. Isaac Florentine, who did Cold Harvest, he's still putting out good stuff, and Jesse V. Johnson, I think, those two. But yeah, there's just not a lot of that. This period of time where like even like a Fred Olin Ray, who was doing a lot of like kind of Skinemax kind of stuff as well, and oh, let me do a movie in space where women are wearing no clothes, whatever it was that he was doing. Corman would come to him and say, I need an action movie. I got a Don the Dragon Wilson movie. Can you direct it? And I can't imagine that. was looking at his bio. I don't think he's done any action movies anymore. I don't think he's anybody's
Olin
coming to
Wright?
him for that kind of thing.
You're talking about Fred Olin, right?
Yeah, Fred Olen Wright. Yeah,
I mean, aside from the Seagal sniper movie,
right.
which was, I mean, that's probably almost 10 years old at this point,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. It's just like the money in action is because I guess it's, and I mean, think about like Corman or PM Entertainment, they knew how to make good action on a low budget.
Sure, yeah.
Nowadays it's like, well, we got to do everything by CGI because it's like, we don't have the budget to shoot up this mansion or whatever. Like, I guess that was part of it too, right? They would find things that they could blow up, and people were like, yeah, I don't need this gas station anymore. Go ahead, blow it up, or whatever.
But I mean, they were all. What I love about PM2 is, and I guess it applies to the Wilson movies too, because they're a wide range. He did Ring of Fire, which are very basic, at least the first two, or the first one. It's just a Bloodsport ripoff. By the time you get to 3, that's just full on batshit. But then Cyber Tracker 2, he's doing basically a RoboCop Universal Soldier ripoff. So PM addressed all the genres as long as it touched on action. Well, actually, that's not true because they did kids movies too.
Right.
The stupid Bigfoot thing, whatever it was, Baby Bigfoot or Little Bigfoot, whatever. Yes. That was PM, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So I think one of those two was Art Camacho's first movie that he directed.
Oh my gosh, I think that sounds right. And then Hollywood Safari and stuff like that. So they were great about diversifying the action and always obviously executing the action very, very well. So yeah, I mean, I would love for a thing like PM to exist now, and I just don't think I don't think it does.
No,
or it will ever again.
No, I agree. Yeah, and even with this movie, that like it had its moments where it was a little bit like the plot was kind of bigger in there.
I do agree. Yeah.
They found their moments. They still kind of managed it. Maybe it wasn't like the every 10 minutes of PM, but it certainly wasn't more than 15. It's like, Wilson's flying from DC out to LA to track down these other kids that were, this thing. Though he doesn't know he's tracking them out, right? He thinks he's tracking out terrorists. And it's like, there just happen to be 2 wrestlers on the plane who were drunk and sexually harassing the flight attendant. It's like, all right, well, here we go. Yeah. It just, there you go. That's the scene. I mean, of course, you think about nowadays, right? That'd be like a big viral moment, that like,
sure,
somebody knocked out 2 obnoxious people on the plane. But it's like, but then of course he also gets that the thing where the flight attendant gives him her number.
Yeah.
And there's the ashtray.
He folds it up and put it in a little mini ashtray. Yeah.
Right. Which is like, again, just thinking about these things that like you wouldn't, no airplane has ashtrays in them anymore. Sure. And I mean, smoking was still, I think at that time they'd banned smoking by that point. I think they just hadn't replaced the seats yet.
Oh, you know what? You're probably right. Yeah. It's just the airplane set they were on hadn't updated their that makes sense.
Yeah, when I flew in '88 to see we went down to go see my grandparents in Florida. My parents flew in Continental and got the cheapest seats in the very back of the plane, and that was the smoking section. It was like the back 4 seats were the smoking section, and I think that was the last time I was ever on a plane that had a smoking section.
Wow. Okay. So and this is 10 years post that. So.
Right. Yeah. So but it's like the seats weren't replaced, or like you said, on this set that they were using, they so he just puts it in the ashtray section. It's like, okay, that's what that's there for.
I bet younger folks would watch that and not even know at all. Like, well, what is that little thing he's putting it in? Like the little flap. They wouldn't process or wouldn't register as a ashtray at all. I don't think.
Yeah, it's such a great. And then like you said, and then we get the bar fight scene where he goes to LA, and of course the first thing we see is when he gets into LA and he's at the hotel is Alexander Keith is naked coming out of the shower.
Yes. Yep.
And that's when too, like, okay, you've got a Fred Olen Ray mainstay because she's just standing there naked. She's not like, and so, she gets dressed and they go to the bar and she's like, why don't you follow this guy while I handle the bar? And it's like one of those things where like, I don't think Wilson's ever walked into a bar in a movie and not had a huge like brouhaha.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So and then they have the love scene like a little bit later, and
which goes on. I was surprised how long it's longer than I remember.
Right. I had the sense that Wilson might have been surprised too. Like I don't know if he was entirely comfortable with that length of love scene.
Well, because they fit in one more opportunity for nudity on top with Alexander Keith, and it's during the shootout, I believe, where the shootout is happening in one side of on the other side of the wall,
Right.
And she's just topless for no reason, and she puts her top on to then go help with the shootout, I believe it was. But I remember there were 3 instances. I sound like a pervert. I remember distinctly there were 3 instances of her being naked. But yeah, they fit them in where they could. So Fred Olen Ray doing the Lord's work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because when Fred Olen Ray speaking, it was Fred Olen Ray and Art Camacho, and the third guy I couldn't tell, but the third guy almost looks like the guy who gets his arm cut off in Showdown in Little Tokyo when the biker who Cary Tagawa cuts his arm off, and he's like, "Do we have a deal now?" Yeah, it's like that's a great way to do business. This is just like
sure,
people's arms off. But I couldn't tell if that was the third guy. But yeah, it's like they're kind of hunting Wilson, and Wilson goes into her room and it's like, we got to get out of here. Somehow we got to take these guys out. And that's when she kind of like puts on this like kind of like this tight top. She kind of it takes her time getting into it as well. It's very Andy Sedaris in a way too, like because they were just always scenes of people getting women. I shouldn't say people; it's mostly women getting dressed and undressed.
Well, yeah, because the golden rule, Tarantino says this, and just it's a great screenwriting advice or filmmaking advice in general is, in any given scene, come in late and leave early. Like you don't want to see the preamble and you don't want to see them walking out the door. So come in late, leave early. But with Fred Olen Ray, often that come in late and leave early is replaced with getting dressed or getting undressed at the end of a scene. So it's wonderful logic. And again, I respect the hell out of it.
Right. Yeah. No. And I mean, it's one of the things that makes this a unique movie in sort of the 90s Wilson era, because I don't think he has any kind of love scenes like this anywhere else in any of these movies. I know there's the Maria Ford stuff, but in the Ring of Fires, but I don't really remember anything to. Yeah, I mean, and Maria Ford, I think it might one of the few direct-to-video movies she did where she wasn't, at a state of undress. I mean, because that was PM. PM didn't, PM's mindset was the exploitation aspect was the action. Whereas this movie, it was, with Corman, I guess it was a little bit of a mix. Going from the 70s when he was doing a lot of nudity in his movies and stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I mean, I don't have my computer in front of me, but the other movie that Fred Olen Ray did with Alexander Keith, it was like a prison movie.
Yes.
And I forget what it's called. Fugitive something, I think.
Yeah.
But then again, there's 47 movies called Fugitive something.
Right.
But
got the sirens going on here.
You want me to pause for a second?
No, that's all right. No, I'm just giving you a warning. Yeah.
Okay.
Fugitive Rage, was that it?
Yes, that sounds about right. Yeah. That's a decent film, but again, it follows the same. That's a women in prison movie straight up. So there's tons of nudity, tons of shower fights. Like, it's bonkers. But
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too with Fred Olen Ray. I mean he's someone. So the funny thing with Fred Olen Ray, I kind of tell this story a little bit, is that he did a movie, like an outlaw Jesse James movie, that I kind of felt was like doing too much of the apologizing for the South in the Civil War kind of thing. And I'm like, or like the South was pretty good or kind of thing. And so I called the movie Disgrace because of that. I was just like, I really didn't like it. And I didn't know he was reading my reviews. And then I did, there was one that he co-directed with Jim Wynorski, and I reviewed that one. Maybe Carnosaur or something like that. And he commented, he's like, "Hey, at least I'm known for something, at least I'll be known for something good," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh man, he's reading my reviews," So I went back and kind of toned it down a little bit, but because it's one of those things when you find out that people, like I remember when Albert Pyun, when I found out he was reading the reviews, he was, mentioning it at one point. He was like, "Hey, can you go back and do Mean Guns again?" And I was like, I guess. And I went and read my Mean Guns review, and I'd said, yeah, a car commercial director could do a better job than this. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I mean, to be honest, it's a lot of grace on his part that he would, instead of being like, who is this kid in his parents' basement, writing about my movies? He doesn't know anything about how movies work. And instead being like, hey, could you give it another shot? And he had somebody that was like, evangelizing his movies for the rest of his career. So
no, sure. Yeah, totally. And I get that now when I go read bad IMDb reviews that I would have been writing 20 years ago about things I've written. And even if it's just destroying me, it's still, it's fun and enjoyable. So yeah, R.I.P. Albert Pune. And that's cool that he did that. I had no idea he read your stuff. Or Fred Olen Ray. That's incredible.
Yeah. The Fred Olen Ray one, I always kind of wondered out, like, I don't know how many he still reads. And it was one of those things where like he was telling me without telling me that he had read the review where I called this movie a disgrace, like it was like.
He probably wanted you to think about it in just the way that you did.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, but I don't think I knew that he had done, like when I was watching Capital Conspiracy, I'm trying to my review if I mentioned it was Fred Olen Ray. But it might have been one of those ones where I went back after the fact and tagged him because I kind of knew Fred Olen Ray more as, the low budget kind of stuff. Well, actually, no, and I did mention Fred Olen Ray because I was talking about in that scene where he's getting his assignment. And there's like the old guys all sitting around the table. And I joked that one of them was a poor man's Charles Napier. And I'm like, why do you have a poor man's Charles Napier? How could you not just pony up for Charles Napier in 1998, like for 3 scenes or whatever? And I was like, but I mentioned Fred Olen Ray by name. I was like, what, like Fred Olen Ray has any choice in it. It's more Roger Corman, but
yeah.
Oh,
that's funny. And the only other thing I really wanted to highlight with Capital Conspiracy is Rick Dean.
Yes.
Are you familiar with this dude?
Yes. Yeah.
Man, a Corman mainstay. One of my favorite. So again, just loving the low budget stuff as I did growing up. Like Jurassic Park was obviously a huge movie for me as a kid. But I think I watched Carnosaur more than Jurassic Park growing up, just because I love the lower budget stuff. So everything was like adjacent to the big budget stuff, which is exactly what Corman did. Carnosaur 3 in particular is probably top 10 movies for me, which may be embarrassing to say, but I love Carnosaur 3. And Rick Dean was in that movie. He's fantastic. And then as I got older and started diving into the Corman stuff in the 90s, he's a character actor, and he was damn impressive and everything. And he's in this film. He's the guy in the wheelchair that Don Wilson goes and visits. And he's only in the movie for about 45 minutes, but a stellar performance, wonderful character actor. And I actually mentioned him in the Comeuppance interview or the podcast that I did with them. And we were talking about how great this guy is because he was in all the like stripper movies Corman did in the 90s, Strip Teaser, those kind of things. Wonderful character actor. And I was like, man, I wonder how old is he now? And we looked up and he died in like the early 2000s.
Right.
So it blew my mind because he was not an older guy. So I was shocked he was dead. So rest in peace, Rick Dean. But in this movie, I forgot he was in it. And so when I saw him pop up, I'm like, man, I just talked about how much I love this guy. And he gives another performance where it's basically a monologue of a dude sitting in a wheelchair, and he does a great job. So some good acting, good character acting in this movie as well.
Yeah. Now, isn't there another? There's a Blood Fist movie, I think, right, where he has an old buddy who's in a wheelchair, and
yes,
and they both get it right. They both get killed. This one I think is a little bit different, at least because when Rick Dean gets killed here, it's not like he's getting killed for helping the hero. I always hate that, like Wilson shows up and like, hey, I need you to look some stuff up for me. Sure, I'll look some stuff up, and then 2 minutes later, some heavies show up and kill the guy. And it's like, oh, really, But at least in this case, the funny thing is the fact that Rick Dean, he's like this computer whiz guy who's sending him emails. Which I love that, but I agree with you. Rick Dean is he's one of those character actors that, again, it's one of those things that we don't really have nowadays.
No,
these character actors that like directors and producers used all the time, and it's just like, oh, hey, we need this person in this movie to read a few pages, and who can we get? Oh, Rick Dean's here and he's willing to do it. And it's like, oh, I don't have to stand. I just have to sit the whole time. Perfect.
Exactly.
I'll do it. Yeah. But they give you something. I mean, another name in this earlier, before this scene with Rick Dean is Chick Venera, who also passed away a little more recently, but he's still also passed away as well. He's the guy in the casino who's like another one of these people that was experimented on. Great scene of just him playing poker or playing blackjack with Wilson.
Yes. No, again, I saw him in a million Fred Olen Ray movies, and just great. So you're right, because I think the closest equivalent we'd have now would be like the Eric Roberts, the Michael Perez, who are, it's like, pay my fee, I'll show up to anything. Which, I'm not insulting that. It's a blue collar approach to acting and the craft, and you got to respect guys who do it. But it doesn't feel the same when you see Eric, you see a movie and the seventh credit is "and Eric Roberts," it doesn't feel the same as like something like a Rick Dean or a Chick Fil A, something like that, where they're going to deliver something a little special. Eric Roberts is a great actor, of course, but I'm just saying, there's something a little different about just I'll show up for a paycheck.
Yeah, and also, Eric Roberts was a bigger name at one time, and so
Sure, and yeah, to see him go from where he was to where he is. Well, that sounds rude. I shouldn't say that, but you're right. Yeah, to go from being a name to that, where aside from me, you, and the comeuppance guys, I don't know many people who have a discussion about Rick Dean.
right.
So it's a different thing.
Yeah, they made these movies a kind of a different thing. Made them special in a way that like when you'd watch them, you could pick out these names. I mean, John talks about Robert Miano and PM movies. I know he's still acting. I think he's close to 80 at this point.
Wow.
But Robert, these names that you get in these movies, and it's like, oh, here's Wilson, and I think one of the things that made it great too was Wilson was still getting the hang of acting at this time, and so you stick him in a scene with Dean, you stick him in a scene with Chick Venera, and they can carry the scene. They do all the work, and Wilson just gets to sit there and smirk and ask questions and sneer and all that kind of stuff.
And I like how you say he was just getting the hang of acting. Meanwhile, he's 8 years into his career at this point and had made 40 movies. But you're right. No, that's absolutely true. Because, he's coming from a very different background than these guys. And you can put him in a scene. And by the nature of him playing off them, they make him better. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's this is a movie that I think if you were watching a marathon of Wilson movies, you might say like, okay, I don't know, where I put this compared to some of the other ones. But I think the other thing is this is one of those movies that we talk about, movies aging well. And it's like the technology hasn't aged well with this movie. But like the budget and like the way the movie is made has aged well, right? Like no one would make this movie today the way that this was made, I don't think. You wouldn't,
No.
I certainly wouldn't be using real bullets or real blanks or whatever, or the explosions and things like that.
No way they would shoot on a moving train if it was moving, or probably not even just shooting on it'd be green screen, So yeah, it was still, I think it was the latter end of what these things were. And I just give it credit. When I think back on his movies, this is one, dare I say, risk taking. Not really, but like just the fact they were putting in which honestly, the ESP thing doesn't even really pay off in the movie, to be fair. Right. It's not really like necessarily like a thing he uses to save the day at the I don't know, but it was a unique angle, and I give him credit for trying instead of just doing while I would have loved a Cybertracker 3, and I could tell you exactly what I think that movie would have been, as you could probably say, just because it's following the formula. This one didn't follow it as much, but there are lulls. I'll agree with you on that. In the second act, my memory of it was better than it actually was. So I feel it's a little slower in some parts, where as opposed to a PM where you get every 10 minutes you get a big action beat. But there was some story in there that I thought was unique. So maybe that's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, I know. I think it's the lulls that are in it. I don't think I think when I first watched it, my brain was kind of velocitized. I was younger, and I just was like, probably hopped up on Mountain Dew or whatever when I was watching it. And, like the lulls were worse in my mind. But watching it this time around, I think again, when a movie's only like an hour and 25 minutes, those lulls, they really have to be really big to really like hurt the movie and I think just when the lulls might start to actually hurt the movie, they insert something, whether it's a fight scene, a shootout, a nude scene, right? Yeah. Nude scene, something like that. So I think in that sense they do a good job there with it. But and so I agree with you. I had a lot of fun watching this one. I had it's been since I reviewed it in 2011, so it's been almost 15 years since I last watched it.
My God. Yeah. Wow. Which is probably so it got made in 98 and you reviewed it in 2011. So that's, it's been longer from that time frame from 2011 till now. So that's nuts.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing to think about too, right? That the movie, I mean, watching it then, I mean, some of the stuff in it, like you can see like kind of how the fashions are turning in the late 90s, where it's like, like the button-up shirt over the t-shirt look that Wilson was going with, that was very popular then. You kind of see those. It doesn't feel like an early 90s movie.
No,
But the funny thing about that is that now we're at a point where late '90s movies also feel old, which it just doesn't seem to make any
Yes.
sense.
Yeah. No, and of course, even if it was later '90s, it still has the which I love this, and in the world I work in with Lifetime and stuff like that, like they're intentionally told to shoot the movies kind of boring, like very little moving camera, no handheld, and this was probably the last era when that was the norm for low budget stuff. So like I said, in the fight scenes, there's no shaky cam, there's very little quick cutting, and it's just very bland, waist up shots, and that was just what it was. Very flat lighting, and it was a cool peek back to kind of see that. And if you would have told me, if I didn't know this was, did you say 98 or 99?
98, yeah.
98. Like if I had no idea of the date and you erase that from my memory, I probably would have guessed this was like 94, 95, just because of the aesthetic, the visual aesthetic of it, not necessarily the clothing. But even that, it all ties together. So it was a cool little peek back.
Yeah, no, it was really fun to, and I think Wilson's a person I haven't covered him as much on the site as I want to. I know we did do Inferno a while back because but Mitch and we did I think we did an Olin Ray movie and a Wynorski movie, and so we did Inferno for the Olin Ray movie. So that one we have covered in Ring of Fire 3. I mentioned that we've covered that, but this '90s period, I did all the Blood Fist as a solo podcast, which I'm regretting doing now because it's like, yeah, there's great stuff to cover there. I mean, the Cyber Tracker movies, I haven't done those yet, so I mean,
Well, I'll call dibs on those if you want.
Yeah, I think Wilson is somebody that definitely needs. I'd like to get him on here more because it is he's when you watch a movie like this, I realize like how much fun he is in these movies.
Yeah. No, and he had built such a catalog in such a short period of time. I mean, when did Blood Fist start? It was like 88, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then they concluded in whatever 95 or somewhere around there. So it was like one a year for a period. The guy worked.
He did, yes. Yeah, he was saying how he did the first two Blood Fist movies, and then the third one was just supposed to be a random prison movie. And Corman's like, why don't we slap the Blood Fist name on it? And that was it. They were just slapping Blood Fist on everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that. Which just no relation outside those first two. And just it was very it was like an anthology series in the best way. I adored those. Like I said, I enjoyed them more as they went on. I didn't care for the first two as much as the later ones.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I watched the first two again, and I mean the second one is just essentially a ripoff of Enter the Dragon. And then the first one is this like this paradigm that Corman has used in a bunch of movies. He just is always using that first movie paradigm. But 3 is where it does it sort of it's a prison movie, its own thing. But then after that, it's just like all these movies that are just Wilson against the world, which I love.
Sure, yeah. I actually rewatched the third one about a year ago, and I forgot that movie gets heavy.
Yes.
Like it's not a pleasant watch in a lot of parts. It kind of like it's a Corman movie and it has Matthias Hughes and Don the Dragon. Black Belt.
Oh, Black Belt. Yes. Yeah.
That's a sinister freaking movie, dude. Like Matthias Hughes, his backstory to like why he's a serial killer is messed up. Yeah. So yeah, that there were some odd choices made in the movies back then where they went really heavy and really sinister. And I'm like, I just want to watch kickboxing, guys.
Right, exactly. I mean, Blood Fist 3, where it's like we're supposed to. There's the guy who's like the pedophile who's like he's supposed to be a sympathetic character, and it's like. No, you can't sell that. Like who like I guess
was an odd choice,
right? Exactly. like that's one of those things. Maybe as a scriptwriter, it's like you think like there's no way I can write that in there, right? And expect that to pass, right? There's no way who's doing
tough.
that. Yeah,
it was tough to swallow watching it a year ago. I was like, man, I don't. Well, am I out of touch or were they out of? Like, right. I don't get what's going on. You're like,
no, because I had John Crosso. We talked about that one. We talked about 3 and 4, and we were both like, man, for everything else in this movie that works, that was a decision that there's no way you can, So. I guess Rich, we're wrapping up here. Anything that you wanted to plug?
Plug?
Yeah.
Oh, heavens to Betsy. I got a Lifetime channel movie coming out on October 19th, I think it is. It's called The Prep School Disappearance. And I'll keep it short. But my favorite thing about working on this particular movie was I had a movie come out 2-3 years ago called The Boarding School Murders.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sure. And you can guess what it's about. It's about a murder in a boarding school. And apparently that movie did really well for Lifetime, and it did well overseas. So the guy I work with at the company, the guy who works with the development of the movies they do, was like, this movie did really well. We kind of want a sequel that's not really a sequel. Like, don't use the same characters, but we just want another boarding school, prep school murder mystery movie, and kind of use the same format. And in my mind, I went, so you want me to do a Blood Fist sequel, basically, where it's the same, it's thematically the same, and we'll give it a similar title. So basically, this is my Blood Fist sequel. So it ties in perfectly with what we were just talking about. So yeah, the prep school disappearance. The script I was pretty happy with. Like I said, I haven't seen a frame of it, but hopefully it'll be good. So if you enjoy the Lifetime thrillers, hopefully it'll be a fun one.
And so that's October 19th.
It's Sunday, October 19th, I believe.
Okay, so it's possible this episode might come out after that. So,
well, hell, you just destroyed my career.
I know, but people keep an eye out for like reruns or like if it's on on demand. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Prep School Disappearance.
Prep School Disappearance. It should be. They always have reruns, so yeah, catch one of those if that's your jam.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'll put that in the description as well in the podcast.
Cool, man.
So
Thank you.
So it'll be in there. Excellent. So yeah, Rich. I mean, I'm sorry it took 10 years to get you back on because this was a ton of fun.
I was really busy for those 10 years. Now I got some time, so we'll be fine.
Exactly. No, definitely have to have you on again because this, there's a whole bunch of Wilson out there. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that there's a
absolutely
whole world of direct to video action out there that
more Sector 4 stories anytime.
Exactly that too. Yeah. For sure. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Rich, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Direct to video, direct to video.